Good morning, live from Windsor. On breakfast today, pomp, pageantry and protests. The US president flies in with praise for the king and the promise of a big day ahead.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
As Trump lands, a boost for Britain's AI industry, with some of America's largest tech companies pledging billions in investments. But there are protests as well. Images of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein are beamed onto the walls of Windsor Castle.
Also ahead, breaking news. The latest UK inflation figures are being published right now. We'll bring them to you in just a moment. Blocked by the courts, the government is still to deport a single migrant back to France under its return deal. Plus,
I'll jump first.
No.
Then you jump first.
No, I said.
What's the matter with you?
I can't swim!
Hollywood says goodbye to one of the all-time greats, Robert Redford, who has died at the age of 89.
Good morning. We are live in Windsor this morning, a rather damp and grey Windsor, it has to be said. But in the coming hours, US President Donald Trump and the First Lady will meet the King and Queen here. We have a huge day ahead, with a carriage procession, a fly-past by the Red Arrows, and a state banquet as well to come. But first, back to Leah with some breaking news.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yes, the UK's latest inflation figures have just been published. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso joins me at the desk. Paul, what do people need to know? What's happening?
Inflation was level in August, 3.8%. That's still nearly double the Bank of England target, which is 2%, but it's the same rate as July. So a little bit of, if not a little bit of respite, essentially, for consumers, and some encouraging underlying numbers. This is the CPI number at 3.8%. Figures below that, the bank looks at and the government look at, the Treasury looks at core inflation. So you take out volatile things like fuel prices, food prices, that actually fell to 3.6%. And services inflation, services, the larger part of the UK economy, that fell to 4.7%, down from 5% in July. So some signs there that inflation is slowing. It is expected to remain high and peak when we get September's figures, so the figures for this month. But after that, there should be some respite. All the forecasters, the bank, the OBR and others expect it to fall just because of maths. There were big energy increases a year ago that will drop out of the numbers. So a little respite, inflation flat, CPI inflation 3.8% in August.
OK, Paul, great stuff. Thank you so much. We're going to hand back now to Windsor and Matt Barbette.
Thanks, Leah. Donald Trump's second state visit as US President is underway. President Trump and the First Lady will be meeting the King at Windsor Castle, which is where we are later on today. With me here is our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, as well. Rhiannon, just give us a flavour of what we can expect today.
Oh, this is going to be huge. People are not mincing their words when they want to talk about just how big this is. Yes, it's a controversial state visit, but they are telling us this is going to be enormous. It's the largest ceremonial welcome we've seen for any head of state, for any state visit in living memory. They want us to look at the fly-past involving UK and US military. They want us to look at the supersized guard of honour that he's going to get. They want us to know about the US military band that also is involved. So all about those close working ties. Of course, Donald Trump back in April said we're going to lay on a fest for him. And now today we're going to see what exactly we've got in store to make sure the president ultimately at the end of the week goes home happy.
Yes, indeed. They can do a lot. They can't make the sunshine, that's the truth. But our US correspondent Mark Stone was at Stansted Airport for the president's arrival last night. Here's his report.
Touchdown for Air Force One and an historic second state visit to the UK for President Donald Trump. A smile and a spring in his step, maybe, because he's been looking forward to this. On the tarmac, protocol dictates it's the Foreign Secretary to greet him, Yvette Cooper, in the job just a couple of weeks, and hoping no one remembers her visceral criticism of the president in the past. He is the man she called a threat to democracy in 2019, abandoning allies, she said, a misogynist. He may still be that to many, but now, unlike then, he holds the cards and he calls the shots.
And so that's what this second state visit is all about. It is an acceptance from the UK that it's not just important to be close to America. The British government's position is that it's vital to be close to Trump's America. It is in their national interests for trade, for security, and for foreign policy.
Arriving at the US ambassador's residence in Regent's Park for his first night, the president gave a clear indication of just how much this moment of British pomp means to him.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
The British charm offensive began in February.
This is unprecedented, and I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us.
Starmer ignored the critics, and it paid off, a trade deal of sorts. Certainly the UK was put in a better position than most, if not all other countries globally.
The relationship that we have is fantastic, because I like them, that's why. That's their ultimate protection.
It was, of course, the now fired ambassador, Peter Mandelson, who got that deal, the reward of appointing him before the risk did it for him.
Peter Mandelson actually did broker a real relationship with MAGA. I mean, it was an incredible act of shape-shifting, but he did it.
Lord Maurice Glassman knows Trump well, a Labour peer close to Team Trump, a rare thing.
It's hard to overestimate the extent to which he sees himself as a king. I mean, this is real. I mean, very, very real. So it's a huge change, this administration, from the Republic to a monarchy. I mean, it's that big. I compare Trump to Julius Caesar or Napoleon, who did that change.
Dump Trump! Dump Trump! Dump Trump!
For now, the protests don't match those from the last state visit. Not close.
He's a friend of a paedophile. He's a convicted felon. I don't think a man like that should be in this country with all this pomp and ceremony laid on for him.
That paedophile is Jeffrey Epstein, and he is the jeopardy here, projected by protesters onto the walls of Windsor Castle. More than awkward, but then it is striking, extraordinary even, that all three central characters over the next 2 days are associated with Epstein. Trump's friendship is historic, but he can't shake it. Starmer, now threatened by the Mandelson link, and then by association through his brother, the King, linked too. Of course, the other gamble is that this is a president who changes his mind, shifts position. The next few days are Britain's attempt to prevent that, to cement the special relationship. Mark Stone, Sky News in Stansted.
Well, let's just take a look at what is being planned today for President Trump's state visit and tomorrow as well. The President and First Lady will arrive at Windsor Castle this morning, where they'll be greeted by the Prince and Princess of Wales, before then being formally welcomed by the King and Queen as a royal salute is fired at both Windsor and at the Tower of London. A carriage procession will then take them all on a route through the Windsor estate before the King and President inspect the Guard of Honour at Windsor Castle. They will then have lunch together with members of the royal family in the state dining room. The President and First Lady will then visit St George's Chapel to lay a wreath on the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II. Later, Mr Trump and his wife will join the King and Queen on the East Lawn to watch a flypast by the Red Arrows and UK and US F-35 jets. A state banquet will follow in the evening with both the King and President Trump set to give speeches there. Then tomorrow, the President will arrive at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence, to a Guard of Honour, where Donald Trump will have a bilateral meeting with Sir Keir Starmer. Later on, the leaders will attend a business reception hosted by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and a press conference is expected to follow. The Prime Minister will then bid farewell to the President as the state visit draws to a close for the second time. Our royal correspondent Brianna Mills is still with us here in Windsor, and that's an important point, isn't it? The second time makes it unprecedented, and the scale as well. Some of this stuff is the biggest they've ever done.
Yeah, and don't forget, state visits are seen as the ultimate diplomatic gift, and that's why a few people may have cringed a bit when we saw Keir Starmer produce the invitation from his top pocket back in February and say, look, we want to invite you for a second time. Diplomats are a bit divided, really. Overall, they say we needed to do this. This is really important. This is our most important bilateral relationship. Some argue, should we have done it as soon? But ultimately, this is a man who does change his mind, so we need to make sure that we keep him on side. One element that will definitely do that is him meeting the royals today. As he was getting on the plane yesterday, that he told us everything we need to know about how he feels about this state visit, not really mentioning Keir Starmer, not mentioning politics, but my goodness, mentioning the King in spades, saying that they are good friends. Someone I've spoken to, kind of an insider, says the King doesn't necessarily know him that well, but just the perception from Donald Trump that he has that friendship with the King is incredibly powerful. Of course, look, we're going to see the glamour of the castle in spades today. It can't completely erase the backdrop to this trip. We saw kind of pictures of Jeffrey Epstein projected on the side of the castle yesterday. That's just one thing. But I think, will that bother the royal family? Ultimately, no. They have been here many, many times before. They know what is expected of them. And look, they will deliver. They will put on the smiles. The body language experts will have a field day. I can't wait to see the pictures and the interaction. It is going to be something to behold, I think.
It really is, Rhiannon. Thank you very much indeed. And that is key, Leah. We'll see the pictures. We're not going to see an awful lot of them in the flesh because of security reasons. As Rhiannon knows, previous state visits, there's been a public carriage procession. People get to see those dignitaries, those heads of state. Not this time. A lot of it's going to be behind closed doors. We will have the pictures nonetheless. Leah, back to you, though, for the time being.
Thanks so much, Matt. Well, the government has insisted its migrant return scheme with France is not a shambles. This is after the High Court temporarily blocks a man's deportation. The 25-year-old from Eritrea, who crossed the Channel on a small boat, argued that he would face the risk of destitution if he was removed to France. Let's go live now to our Lisa Holland, who's in Paris for us. The government calling this, saying it's not a shambles, but nonetheless, Lisa, the optics, they're not great.
Well, to be fair, I do think that it is far too soon to dismiss this one-in, one-out scheme as a shambles, because even some of the NGOs, the charities that I've been talking to, who are directly representing and supporting the migrants that the government wants to send back here to France, are saying, look, it's too soon to do that. They say that these legal challenges were to be expected. I think that when the government said last weekend that these removals were imminent, it was clearly hoping that there wouldn't be these kinds of legal challenges. What we know is that a number of what's called removal directions have been issued by the government to people who've been detained who crossed the Channel in August. Now, those people effectively were given warning that they were due to go on flights on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. When the spectre of legal action reared its head, I think in some cases the government perhaps decided to temporarily suspend those removal directions. That doesn't mean they've been cancelled, but put on hold. But in the particular case of one man, an Eritrean, that reached the High Court. Clearly, the government wanted to take that to the highest level for a judge to decide. Now, a judge said that the claim from the Eritrean man that he had been trafficked needed further investigation. So that's expected to return to the courts within the next couple of weeks. But far too soon to say that this is Rwanda Mark II in a scheme that's dead in the water, I think.
OK, Lisa, for now, thank you. Let's take a look at some other stories making news today. And the main suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann is set to be released from prison in Germany today. The 49-year-old, known as Christian B, served a 7-year sentence for rape in an unrelated crime. He's never been charged over the toddler's disappearance and denies any involvement. Ricky Hatton's son, Campbell, has addressed his father's death publicly for the first time. He posted on social media a series of family photos with this caption: "Heartbreak isn't the word. I can't explain how much I'm going to miss the laughs we had and all the good times, which I will remember forever." The former boxing world champion died on Sunday, aged 46. And more than a quarter of driving tests in the UK are now taken in automatic vehicles. The AA driving school says the rise of electric cars is partly responsible. Well, it predicts a third of all tests will be carried out in automatics by 2027. Elsewhere, the man accused of killing the right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk has appeared in court via video link. Tyler Robinson was seen for the first time since his arrest and spoke only to confirm his name. Prosecutors in Utah say they're seeking the death penalty for the 22-year-old. Our US correspondent David Blevins has this report.
Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Dressed in a suicide prevention vest, he appeared via video link from the Utah County Jail to face 7 charges, including aggravated murder.
Tyler James Robinson intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk.
The prosecution pursuing a death sentence.
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty.
Police had released these pictures of an alleged gunman at the university where Charlie Kirk was shot dead while addressing students. Their 33-hour manhunt ending with the arrest of a 22-year-old murder suspect, Tyler Robinson. According to prosecutors, he had texted a roommate, his partner, "Drop what you are doing, look under my keyboard," where the roommate allegedly found a note reading, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." When asked why, he said to have replied, "Why did I do it? I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out." Having seen images of the suspect, the state says his parents persuaded their son to turn himself in to police.
Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented.
Charlie Kirk was a prominent conservative, debating social and cultural issues. He helped return Donald Trump to the White House.
Mr. Robinson, at this time, you will remain in custody without bail.
For Tyler Robinson, the judicial process has begun. A virtual appearance with very real consequences. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, just in time for the street cleaners to be passing us here at Windsor Castle. As I'm sure you can hear that noise. Rhiannon Mills is still with me, our royal correspondent. Let's just talk about security, because as we were waiting to chat, you were telling us the long walk, that famous long walk up to Windsor Castle, is all almost sealed off right now.
Yeah. Look, I've been here for many big royal events, the likes of, I don't know, President Macron's state visit very recently, Harry and Meghan's wedding. I have never seen security screens like it. You literally cannot see the long walk, which is that kind of spectacular run up to the castle. And look, it's a very clear sign of everything we are doing to make sure that the president stays safe. And this is one of the biggest police operations that we've seen in recent years. Look, ultimately, it's also about making sure that he doesn't see anything that's going to upset him, so keeping the protesters away. But there was a lot of chat in the run-up to this state visit. Was he going to get the carriage procession?
Yeah.
For Macron, it looks spectacular up the high street. No surprises here, the president is not getting that. But he is getting a carriage ride, because for his first state visit in 2019, he didn't get carriages because it was in central London. So look, I think for this state visit, it's all about trying to, again, tick those boxes of what do they think is going to really kind of pique the interest of Donald Trump, what's going to keep him happy, what's going to kind of really make sure that the president feels that he is welcome and feels nothing but positive thoughts towards the United Kingdom. And of course, it's not just the meetings that he's going to have with the King, with the Prime Minister on the coattails there, hanging on the periphery. It's all the other meetings that are going to go on behind the scenes. Yeah. I think it's amazing that Windsor Borough Council are trying to do this cleaning. He's not going to see the roads out here.
There he goes. Having his moment in the sun there, the street cleaner. Of course. It's almost like they knew we'd be on air right now doing that. And I don't think Donald Trump's going to see this bit of Windsor at all. More seriously, Rhiannon, there's a lot of talk that actually the way that things can be controlled and managed here in Windsor means that state visits will only be here from here on in. I've heard that rumour mentioned a couple of times.
I think it's also partly because it's just the most spectacular setting.
Yeah.
The President Macron's state visit, I just think, looked on another level. compared to the events that maybe we see in central London. Yes, they get to go to Monarchy HQ when it comes to Buckingham Palace, but there is something very quintessentially English and British about Windsor Castle. And Donald Trump, as he was getting on the plane yesterday, went, "They're giving me this one in Windsor." He really thinks that this is the ultimate gift that we
He's
can
like
give
a kid
him.
at Christmas, isn't he, really?
We are going to give him the ultimate sleepover that he has ever dreamt of. It's going to be, kind of a big, big moment for him.
The ultimate sleepover, you heard it here first. Rihanna, thank you very much indeed. Let's hear from the government now. I'm joined by Technology Secretary Liz Kendall from Westminster. Good morning to you. Tell us more about this 30 billion or so investment that you're announcing this morning in concert with the state visit.
Well, this is a huge vote of confidence in Britain, our people, our talent. £30 billion of investment in the technologies that we believe will create the jobs and opportunities of the future. And this is right across the UK. We're announcing a new AI growth zone in the northeast, which we believe will create up to 5,000 new jobs. And it's going to link with apprenticeships for young people, the clean energy of the future to help bring people's bills down, investment in Scotland in a new data centre powered by clean energy, and in Essex and Hertfordshire right across the country. You know, there are big advances taking place, and this government is determined to ensure the people and the places that most need those good jobs, the incomes that they need to live on, the opportunities to create new medical advances, to cure diseases, and all of those advances benefit people in this country. This is a great US-UK tech deal, but it is really delivering for people in this country.
Because Liz Kendall, plenty of people familiar with the situation will also point to the fact that a lot of British-born companies have decided to go to the US. Arm Holdings listing in New York, Just Eat, Deliveroo, the likes of AstraZeneca pulling investment from Speak in Liverpool. They'll wonder why you're not focusing on keeping that investment in the UK and not letting it leave rather than the other way round.
Actually, we are. Our strategy, our AI Opportunities Action Plan, really focuses on what more we need to do to help our brilliant startups scale up and stay in the UK. That's one of the big things we're doing, trying to secure investment here in this country through the British Business Bank, but also making sure that we've got greater skills in this country. We're going to be training 7.5 million people, upskilling them with the AI and tech skills of the future, because we know there's much more we need to do to grow our homegrown talent and keep that talent here. But I would say this. But again, the investment that we're announcing...
Let me just come back on this for a second. Let me just come back on that for a second, because a lot of companies will be paying more now to employ people because of the Labour government's increase in national insurance contributions by companies. They'll be hearing you say this, saying, we want to spend money, you're taking more of it off us in tax these days, we can't spend it, we can't invest in our people like you want them to.
The many companies that I speak to, including in science and technology, actually, they do want to keep investing here, grow their business here, and what do they need? They need the skills and talent, they need the investment in their companies for the future, they need the data centres to power this revolution, they need the clean energy to drive it. We are working on all those things together. But what is really important about today's announcement is it is a huge vote of confidence in this country. There is much more that we need to do to grow the economy, put more money back into people's pockets. But this will lead to us being at the cutting edge of the future. We see, from the industrial revolution of the past to the technological revolution now, Britain has great skills and talents. Our job is to make sure it works for people right across the country.
Just one final question on AI. Satya Nadella, who is the boss of Microsoft, says he believes AI investment could increase the UK economy by 10%. again, he would say that, wouldn't he? Because his company and others, Nvidia, who are also part of this deal, will benefit ultimately. Are you convinced that AI is going to grow the economy and not take people's jobs away from them?
Well, I think AI will create new jobs. It will change jobs as well. But it is also true that in any economy, as new developments come on board, some jobs are lost, some are created, which is why the point I made earlier about training 7.5 million people, upskilling them with the skills they need for the future is so important. And I would say, you know, it isn't just Microsoft or Google or these other companies saying this is the key to the future. We actually saw in the last year the AI sector grew 23 times faster than the rest of the economy. There are real opportunities here, but we have got to make sure we get the investment, the skills and the jobs in this country, unleashing our talent to make sure everyone in the UK benefits.
This week, we were led to believe the one-in, one-out scheme would be up and running. We learned that the courts have prevented an Eritrean man from being flown to France last night. Can you tell us how that scheme is going right now?
Well, we're disappointed in that judgment. It is an interim judgment, but it will not stop this really important deal with France going ahead and giving a very strong message that if you come to this country illegally, you can and you will be deported. You know, we're taking action now. I don't believe this is a silver bullet and it won't solve everything, but Shabana Mahmood, our new Home Secretary, is absolutely determined to make sure this, along with the other action we are taking to prevent work upstream, to prevent those criminal gangs in the first place, together, we are absolutely determined to tackle this problem.
Yeah, Shabana Mahmood, I think, in coming in as the new Home Secretary, said everything is on the table, not least looking at the European Convention on Human Rights, which the UK remains a signatory. There are others who would prefer we weren't, for example, Reform UK. Do you think if the courts continue to block what you intend to do with this one-in, one-out scheme, that you would look at changing the relationship with the ECHR?
We have said we will look at the interpretation and the application of that, but actually withdrawing is a totally false solution, because the only reason we can sign these returns deals with other countries like France is because we're a member of these HR. They would not sign those deals with us if we broke those international commitments. So we will look at the interpretation and the application. We won't withdraw from it altogether, but I should say we will also take other action. Our crime and policing bill is going through Parliament at the moment. That will give new counter-terrorism powers to our border force. We've already deported 35,000 people who did not have a right to be here. The new returns deal with France, I think, is an important step forward, but we are determined to tackle this so people know if they come here illegally, they will be deported.
I'd just like to finish off referring to what we expect to be discussed between the Prime Minister and Donald Trump. Plenty of issues, tariffs, our relationship, Ukraine, of course, but not least the situation in Gaza. We're anticipating, of course, because Keir Starmer said he will, the recognition by the UK of the Palestinian state in the coming weeks. In the meantime, this time yesterday, we saw a UN commission say that it believes Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. No response yet, though, from the UK government to that. What is your response?
What we have seen happening in Gaza is appalling and abhorrent, and we have been extremely clear that we want Israel to stop this appalling action. We need an immediate ceasefire. We need the aid to come in. They need to stop the annexation of territories. And I understand how deeply
to say it's genocide.
That is for the court. It has been and always will be for the courts to decide. We have been clear that we believe Israel should stop that action. They need to let the aid in, and they need to commit to to a peace process and a ceasefire that delivers a two-state solution. I do not think that the action that's being taken, helps Israel in the long run, because the only way we are going to solve this is having those two states living safely side by side.
OK. Liz Kendall, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Still to come here on Breakfast, I'll be speaking to former British ambassador to the US, Sir David Manning, as President Trump arrives in the UK for his historic second state visit.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Welcome back to Windsor. Donald Trump's state visit here comes at a crucial time for the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He's had a real fortnight of it, not least with Angela Rayner going and Peter Mandelson being sacked, amongst other difficult things for him to get over. I'm joined now by the former ambassador to the United States between 2003 and 2007, Sir David Manning. Sir David, it's really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's just continue that point. In terms of the timing of this, pretty handy for the Prime Minister, you'd think.
The timing is one of those coincidences, isn't it? The invitation was issued some months ago. You don't know what the backdrop is going to be for a state visit, because there's obviously a long lead time. And I think it has to be seen as something that is a celebration of the long-term relationship, the showcase of the relationship between two countries, rather than necessarily tied to the individuals at the time. I think it transcends the individuals. But of course, it is important. And I think the Prime Minister would take pleasure or pride in the fact that the relationship is with President Trump and on his level is a good one, as far as we can see.
Of course not tied to any individual, but the sacking of one of your successors in Peter Mandelson in the past week or so, how much of a spanner in the works would that have been?
Well, it's very awkward. Of course, it's embarrassing. Of course, it attracts an enormous amount of attention. And it's very unfortunate. But as I say, these things are not actually about individuals like ambassadors, or even in the end about presidents and prime ministers. The whole point about these visits, which is a very top sort of visit, is to celebrate the relationship as a whole. And so I think that's what the prime minister will be focusing on. He'll want to talk about the whole question of our economic relationship with the United States, and he wants to talk about a whole lot of international issues.
The thing is, between them, clearly their politics are very, very different. Keir Starmer is centre-left. Donald Trump is avowedly right-wing. But they seem to get on. Again, just understanding how it works behind the scenes and people doing your former job. How much do they play a part in making sure that relationship works, even if they have differences of opinion on certain topics?
Well, the chemistry matters. Of course it does in any relationship between any two people. But I think on the whole, heads of government know very well that they have to deal with the other head of government they had on the other side of the table. So I think you get on with it, you do the best you can. I mean, we have seen some unlikely pairings throughout the post-war period between presidents and prime ministers. But on the whole, I think they're committed to try to make the relationship work in the best way they can in the interests of their own country. So you're quite right. It would be futile to pretend that chemistry doesn't matter, but it's bigger than that. And the ambassador at the time can certainly hope to interpret each leader, as it were, to the other and oil the wheels for that relationship.
Now, we may see, or get a sense at least, of the pomp and pageantry today here at Windsor Castle. The real business is going to happen at Chequers tomorrow with that bilateral agreement. We know that Rachel Reeves is going to be hosting an event and a press conference as well. Is that where the substance of this state visit really matters? That's where there will be the persuasion, the striving for agreement on things like tariffs and Ukraine and other topics?
Well, I think that will be the political guts of it, for sure. I think the state visit is valuable in the sense that it brings the president here and opens the door to those discussions tomorrow at the highest political level, when the prime minister will have the opportunity to talk to the president about a whole range of issues, things that affect us very directly bilaterally. That you touched on, such as financial services, what sort of tariff deal we're going to get and so on, but also to address the issues where we certainly have concerns and sometimes differences. It's no good pretending we don't, whether it may be over the handling of Ukraine and Russia, whether it's what's happening in the Middle East, particularly Israel and the Palestinians, handling China. So I think it is a visit in two halves, but I think it's a mistake not to recognise that the value of the soft power, if you like, today allows the Prime Minister the opportunity tomorrow to have a pretty intensive exchange with the President about a whole range of really very difficult issues.
Let's just finish off today by talking about how that soft power plays out. Well, not just in the US, around the world. There's plenty of international media here today. But we hear that a big part of this is showing Americans just how great Britain can look. I mean, the weather might satisfy their prejudices right now, of course, with it being grey and damp. But when you were in the US and this kind of thing was happening in the UK, did you see a reaction from Americans?
Yes, certainly. I think the monarchy has a great attraction. There's mystique around it. I think it is an ace we have in our diplomatic pack, which most countries can't match. And therefore it's valuable to us, and using our soft power is an intelligent thing to do. And certainly when I was in the United States, which is now a long time ago, but Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, came to the United States, and you could see the impact this has. So I don't think we should underestimate the interest in which, this visit will be, which this will be followed in the United States.
Yeah, they do love the history. I mean, this castle is 1,000 years old, give or take, 4 times older, mostly than the United States itself, of course, which celebrates its 250th anniversary next year. So, David, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Let's go to Mari now, our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, who's in Downing Street for us this morning. Let's just continue that theme, Mari, because look, there's a lot riding on this for the government, for British businesses, of course. They'll want discussion about the tariffs, of the defence of Europe as well with Ukraine. But just to reiterate that point and make just as David there, Keir Starmer will be welcoming the timing of this given the torrid 3 weeks he's had.
Yeah, absolutely. Nonetheless, though, I do think that, there are two ways this could go, especially at that joint press conference that we're expecting tomorrow. Donald Trump is notoriously unpredictable, and last time he was here in the UK, when he was here in Scotland over the summer, he did criticise immigration when he was here. So let's wait and see how easy of a ride Keir Starmer gets. But obviously, the stakes are incredibly high. There's a huge amount of jeopardy for the Prime Minister. And at Sky News, we understand that the Prime Minister spoke to President Trump on the phone after he arrived last night in the UK and welcomed President Trump to the UK. Now, today, obviously, is more of the royal side of things. Tomorrow is when the hard politics, let's say, begins. The difficulty, of course, for Keir Starmer is he's trying to balance essentially keeping in President Trump's good books when it comes to our relationship with the US, but also maintaining that friendship between two leaders that, as you were saying, are from very different sides of the political spectrum. Also hoping to potentially try and get something on steel and aluminium tariffs. There's been reports this morning that the idea of a zero tariff deal with the US has now been shelved. Looks like perhaps is not going to happen, at least for now. And then obviously the positive news about that big tech deal. The difficulty is that Keir Starmer has to balance that with his relationship with the British public. And if you look at the polling, new polling that came out yesterday from YouGov on this, said that actually 45% of the British public think that this is a bad idea, this second state visit, versus 30% who think it's a good idea. 30% feel that actually Starmer's too positive toward Trump in comparison to 13% who think he's not positive enough, and 27% who think it's about right. So overall, the numbers are suggesting that actually Donald Trump is not the most popular figure here in the UK, and Keir Starmer's going to be aware of that. So he's going to have to find a way to balance that, especially the Lib Dems are using this as a stick to beat him with, saying that we shouldn't be welcoming President Trump on a second state visit while, as far as he's concerned, there's a genocide ongoing in Gaza. And of course, that Peter Mandelson issue that is overshadowing this whole thing. So the Prime Minister needs this to go well, and he needs, really, President Trump not to be too unpredictable tomorrow.
That's a big ask. That is a big ask, Mari. Thank you very much indeed. The atmosphere here in Windsor right now is akin to when guests are coming over for dinner and you're putting all those last-minute touches in place and anticipating what it might be like when they turn up. And hopefully they're not going to be too critical and spot that you haven't dusted a corner. I mean, they've polished this pavement behind us at least twice in the past hour, just to give you a sense of it. To say they're rolling out the red carpet is an understatement. They're really going all out to impress President Trump on his unprecedented second state visit. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has been taking a look at how Britain hopes to woo the president through what we heard David Mills call soft power.
It is the fairy tale setting for the ultimate state visit, but even this fortress has needed a little extra for welcoming the UK's controversial friend. Of all of the big royal events, this feels like it is on another level. Not just what we're doing to make sure that the president stays safe, but also to avoid him seeing anything that might upset him, such as those protests. After all, this is a man who regularly changes his mind, and this week is all about making sure he leaves feeling only positive thoughts towards the United Kingdom. And that's why everything about this state visit is meant to be bigger and better. Thousands of soldiers and horses on parade, with more pageantry than we've seen for any other world leader, a symbol of our vital military ties.
We're putting as much as we can into this as well. There's a few other extra things thrown in there with a beating retreat. It's a big part of what we do is we are part of the sort of PLC of the country. And it's really important that we put the best foot forward as we can to show off our nation in the best light that we can. So it's a lot of pressure, but an enormous privilege.
Especially with President Trump coming over, it's one of our greatest allies. I think it's only right that we show a good welcome to the country.
It will be helped by the fact that already the president has developed his own special relationship with both King Charles.
He's a beautiful man, a wonderful man, and we appreciate it. I've known him, gotten to know him very well, actually.
And Prince William.
He's a good man, this one.
But Prince Andrew will be absent. Heavily involved in Trump's last state visit, he does live on the Windsor estate, but now no longer a working royal because of his own links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, a scandal that Trump really doesn't want to be reminded of. But one that has ramped up the interest in this state visit even further. The stage now set for the overnight stay that Donald Trump has always dreamt of. And the royal family know, for a man who is obsessed with the monarchy, it's again up to them to fly the flag. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, at Windsor Castle.
Well, joined by former Metropolitan Police Senior Officer Dal Babu, who knows all about the security operation at these kind of events. Dal, it's good to see you. Look, we're seeing on the surface what is going on here in Windsor. We're seeing police officers. We even met some police officers from Northern Ireland who come over last night to bolster security here. Behind the scenes, what's it like?
It's a massive operation. It just doesn't get much bigger than protecting the president, because we know that there's huge opposition to his policies, whether it's around Gaza, his links with Epstein, the tariffs. There are so many things that people will come out and demonstrate and then seek to do that. And so we're seeing this is largely behind the scenes. I've had the pleasure of staying at Windsor Castle overnight. It's quite a remarkable venue, and there's just so much history to see. So he'll certainly be kept busy, but it is an unusual visit in the sense that he's not going to be amongst the public. It's very much around closed gates.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it's centred on the privacy of Windsor Castle and the privacy of Chequers tomorrow. Does that make the security operation a little bit easier?
Absolutely, and I'm sure once we've had the shooting of the Conservative Charles Kirk, that would have factored into how the British would be managing this particular incident. But the fact that it's behind closed doors, the fact that you haven't got public, he's not mingling. When we see other leaders, President Macron very recently, who would have sort of gone along and shaken a few hands, I think those kind of opportunities will probably not be available for Mr. Trump. And I think it will be very much around in secure areas that have been checked, and a huge, massive police presence to keep the president safe.
Dal, let me ask specifically about London, because there may well be some protests here. We've seen things beamed onto the walls of Windsor Castle in the past 24 hours or so led by Donkey's organisation. There is expected to be another protest in London, though. We've seen a lot of protests, a lot of marches in London in recent weeks, and also the strain that has put on the Metropolitan Police. Do you think they can cope?
So as you pointed out, you've seen officers from Northern Ireland. I think what you'll see is what's called mutual aid. So even though the Metropolitan Police is huge, Thames Valley Police, Metropolitan Police will have had a significant number of what's called mutual aid resources. So I don't think there's any problems about having sufficient police officers. I think what we'll see is everything very much behind closed doors as much as possible. And I think demonstrators will be kept at arm's length.
Former Chief Superintendent Dal Babu, really appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you very much indeed. You are watching Breakfast here on Sky News. We're live in Windsor as we anticipate the arrival here for the second time of Donald Trump for his unprecedented state visit. There is the view of the magnificent Windsor Castle, nigh on 1,000 years of history tied up in this place. Quite a bit older, almost 4 times older than the US itself. We'll be back after the break.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
The slums
once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Welcome back. Movie stars and film fans alike have been paying tribute to Hollywood legend Robert Redford after his death at the age of 89. Now, the actor became known as an icon behind the cinema as well as in front of it, was a great champion of independent film too. Let's talk more about this. Our entertainment reporter, Debbie Rigard, was actually on the red carpet last night chatting away to your busy mate, Leonardo DiCaprio. And he had a great tribute, didn't he, to Robert Redford?
Yeah, he had some lovely words to say talking about him. Of course, he played The Great Gatsby before him, and then Leo taking on that role only a couple of years ago as well. So he had some beautiful words to say.
And I suppose the legacy of Robert Redford, it's huge, the impact that he had, the people that he brought in, you know, like Brad Pitt back in the day with Spy Game, that was huge. And I just generally think that he was one of the good guys in Hollywood.
And this is the thing, you could close your eyes and throw a dart at his filmography and you're going to land on a gem no matter what. When you look at the films that he created, of course, starting off with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the film that threw him into the mainstream media, but also gave him that nickname, which then he used for good, creating the Sundance Film Festival, which was all about giving space and giving a platform to new filmmakers, to low-budget films, to independent films, something that a lot of actors weren't doing at the time. He was really an advocate for that. Then you talk about his environmentalism. He's one of the first people to ever, in the Hollywood industry, to actually speak up. He was talking about clean energy. He spoke at the UN. He also did climate summits. This is a man that really knew what he loved and had his passion, and he spoke about it publicly.
And tributes have been pouring in, as we said.
Pouring in. So we've already got actor Meryl Streep. Of course, she was in Out of Africa with Robert, and she said that one of the lions has passed, and that's a true symbol of who he was, of course. Barbara Streisand, who was in The Way We Were, she paid tribute, saying he was charismatic, intelligent, intense, and always interesting. One that I loved was Scarlett Johansson. Of course, she was only 11 when she was in The Horse Whisperer, and she actually said that Bob created an environment on set that was calm and precious, and a place where actors could make discoveries, which is exactly what you want as a creative person, for somebody to hold that.
Absolutely, and my kids know him because of the remake of Pete's Dragon.
This is the thing, and what's great about Robert was he always just loved film. He loved the idea of the industry and what it could bring to the world. And every year he reinvented himself. So, of course, in the 60s and 70s, he was an actor. Through the 80s and 90s, he was a director. Then he had Sundance Film Festival. And then through the 2000s, he actually returned to a lot of childhood films like that. Of course, we've also seen him playing the horse in Charlotte's Web, and even in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was in Captain America, Winter Soldier, which is a real surprise for a lot of fans to see him in it. But he was saying he wants his filmography to be seen by every generation.
A great man, a huge loss. Debbie, thank you so much. We're going to hand back to Matt now in Windsor.
Leah, thank you very much indeed. Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent, is still with me now. Rhiannon, I'd like to talk about the gifts that will be given, because that is a big part of this. You know, what do you get the man who's got everything? Well, I have it on very good authority. There was a lot of discussion about giving Donald Trump a red box. They're the red boxes that government ministers have, that the King has for their briefs and their correspondence. They are made by Barrow, Hepburn and Gale. There was a bit of friction about this.
I'm not surprised.
I don't know if this got green lit, and I don't know if we'll find out, but a red box with Donald Trump's initials on it. Apparently it was liked on the American side. It was recommended by people from the Republican side of things here in the UK. What do you make of that?
OK, there is no doubt that those in the Foreign Office, the Palace, will be taking advice from the White House in terms of what is going to tick all those boxes.
Apparently he wanted one, but it's a symbol of British power, British
I
authority.
suspect that may be going too far. But yeah, we do get the list of gifts later on, and sometimes you kind of unpick it and you're like, well, that's slightly obscure, but it's all about kind of trying to hit those marks of what really kind of plays into the president's interests.
Yeah.
And look, we know that he can't get enough of the royal family. That's why when he was getting on the plane yesterday, he just could not stop talking about meeting King Charles. And that's what's been interesting about this state visit. It's the second one. What can they do to make this one better than the first in 2019?
Always difficult when you're having guests back to remember what you did last time. Do you serve the same meal or go different at that state banquet? More from Windsor Castle after the break.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Good morning. Live from Windsor on Breakfast today. Pomp, pageantry and protests. The US president flies in with praise for the king and the promise of a big day ahead.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
But yes, there are protests as well. Images of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein are beamed onto the walls of Windsor Castle. And alongside the ceremony, a boost for Britain's AI industry, with some of America's largest tech firms pledging billions in investment.
Also ahead, blocked by the courts, the government is still to deport a single migrant back to France under its returns deal. Plus, inflation remains unchanged, but food and drink prices continue to rise.
I'll jump first. No. Then you jump first. No, I said. What's the matter with you? I can't swim!
Hollywood says goodbye to one of the all-time greats, Robert Redford, who died at the age of 89.
Good morning. We are live in Windsor, in the shadow of 1,000 years of history at Windsor Castle. In the coming hours, the US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania will meet the King and Queen here. We have a huge day ahead with a carriage procession, a flypast by the Red Arrows, and a state banquet to come. With me here in the shadow of the castle, our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills, and also a former British ambassador to the US, Lord Darrach. Kim Darrach is with me as well. I know, Kim, you've been to plenty of these kind of things in your time, but what most of us don't get to realise is what happens behind the scenes. How much of a headache is it for a UK ambassador to the US?
Matt, these events, state visits, usually fixed 2 years in advance, and there is months of planning goes into them. This one is at much, much shorter notice, so it would have been frantic preparations for weeks and weeks, and every minute is planned. So there's a huge amount of work goes into it. If you're on the other side of that wall behind us, if you're one of the officials, as I've been on a state visit, then there's a lot of standing around, to be honest, a lot of waiting around.
It's like our job.
It is rightly all about the principles, but there is some extraordinary pageantry. And if you want a little clue of how much the president values this, when he did his first state visit, when I was ambassador, he took his whole family with him, as if to say, this is special, this is different. I want you all to see this and experience this. So for him, this is really something.
Took his whole family with him, Rhiannon, because he probably sees himself as the American royal family. There's definitely comparisons that he would like to make to this history that is behind us.
Look, what we're going to see today is the family-to-family interaction, as well as the state-to-state interaction, and that is what is so powerful about these state visits. Kim and I were talking about this last week. They are literally the ultimate diplomatic gift, and look, no one is being coy or shy when we are being told this is going to be bigger and better than any other state visit. Literally, the army is saying this is going to be the largest ceremonial display we have ever seen for a state visit in living memory. So despite all the controversy around this state visit, we are literally rolling out every bit of red carpet we possibly can to show off basically UK PLC at its best, really.
That's why we're here, and we'll hear from both of you again shortly. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has also travelled over and was at Stansted Airport last night for the president's arrival.
Touchdown for Air Force One and an historic second state visit to the UK for President Donald Trump. A smile and a spring in his step, maybe, because he's been looking forward to this. On the tarmac, protocol dictates it's the Foreign Secretary to greet him, Yvette Cooper, in the job just a couple of weeks, and hoping no one remembers her visceral criticism of the president in the past. He is the man she called a threat to democracy in 2019, abandoning allies, she said, a misogynist. He may still be that to many, but now, unlike then, he holds the cards and he calls the shots.
And so that's what this second state visit is all about. It is an acceptance from the UK that it's not just important to be close to America. The British government's position is that it's vital to be close to Trump's America. It is in their national interest for trade, for security, and for foreign policy.
Arriving at the US ambassador's residence in Regent's Park for his first night, the president gave a clear indication of just how much this moment of British pomp means to him.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
The British charm offensive began in February.
This is unprecedented, and I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us.
Starmer ignored the critics, and it paid off, a trade deal of sorts. Certainly the UK was put in a better position than most, if not all other countries globally.
The relationship that we have is fantastic, because I like them, that's why. That's their ultimate protection.
It was, of course, the now fired ambassador, Peter Mandelson, who got that deal, the reward of appointing him before the risk did it for him.
Peter Mandelson actually did broker a real relationship with MAGA. I mean, it was an incredible act of shape-shifting, but he did it.
Lord Maurice Glassman knows Trump well, a Labour peer close to Team Trump, a rare thing.
It's hard to overestimate the extent to which he sees himself as a king. I mean, this is real. I mean, very, very real. So it's a huge change, this administration, from the republic to a monarchy. I mean, it's that big. I compare Trump to Julius Caesar or Napoleon, who did that change.
Dump Trump, dump Trump, dump Trump.
For now, the protests don't match those from the last state visit. Not close.
He's a friend of a paedophile. He's a convicted felon. I don't think a man like that should be in this country with all this pomp and ceremony laid on for him.
That paedophile is Jeffrey Epstein, and he is the jeopardy here, projected by protesters onto the walls of Windsor Castle. More than awkward, but then it is striking, extraordinary even, that all three central characters over the next 2 days are associated with Epstein. Trump's friendship is historic, but he can't shake it. Starmer, now threatened by the Mandelson link, and then by association through his brother, the king linked too. Of course, the other gamble is that this is a president who changes his mind, shifts position. The next few days are Britain's attempt to prevent that, to cement the special relationship. Mark Stone, Sky News in Stansted.
Well, let's take a look now at what is planned for President Trump's state visit in the next couple of days. The President and First Lady will arrive here at Windsor Castle this morning. They will then be greeted by the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, before being formally welcomed by the King and the Queen as a royal salute is fired at both Windsor here and also at the Tower of London. A carriage procession will then take them all on a route through the Windsor estate, that's effectively behind closed doors, before the King and the President inspect the Guard of Honour at Windsor Castle. They will have lunch together with members of the royal family in the state dining room, and the President and First Lady will then visit St George's Chapel to lay a wreath on the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II, who of course hosted the President on his first state visit. Later, President Trump and his wife will join the King and Queen on the East Lawn to watch a flypast by the Red Arrows and UK and US F-35 jets. A state banquet will follow this evening, with both the King and President set to give speeches there. Looking ahead to tomorrow, the President will arrive at Chequers, which is, of course, the Prime Minister's country residence, to a Guard of Honour, where Donald Trump will have a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Later, the leaders will attend a business reception that's hosted by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and then a press conference is expected to follow that. The Prime Minister will then say goodbye to the President as the state visit draws to a close. Still here, Royal Correspondent Rhiannon Mills and also former British Ambassador to the US, Lord Darroch. Kim, coming back to you, that really spells it out, that timeline. Today is the pomp and pageantry. Tomorrow, it's all about the business.
Yeah, and don't underestimate how much President Trump enjoys the pomp and pageantry. For him, today is really special, but you're right, the business gets done tomorrow. And the meeting with Keir Starmer is unquestionably important. There are big international issues to discuss, notably Ukraine, Gaza. We still have issues of American tariffs, notably this 25% tariff on steel, which is a big problem for us. The meeting with business leaders should not be underestimated either. This is an opportunity to put the captains of British industry in front of the President. They get a few minutes each and they will make their pitches. And of course, behind all this, there is that big new investment by Microsoft, 32 billion, I think.
Nvidia as well, yeah.
Which is very, very big. And then we get the moment that I guess you guys are most excited about, and that the officials over there behind those walls will be most worried about, which is the press conference. Because Donald Trump says what he thinks at press conferences. He doesn't read out spin doctors' lines.
He says what he thinks, but we can see with some of the protesting that's already happening, the issues that protesters want raised, not least Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Will the President, will the Prime Minister be insulated from that, or will they be fully aware that this is an issue that might crop up?
Oh, they will know that this is going to be asked about at the press conference. I think it's very unlikely they will talk about it in the talks. They will think that there is real substance to talk about. But their advisors will be thinking, what are you guys going to throw at them? And in particular, people were thinking, how is Donald Trump going to respond to all this? Because you will try and draw a contrast, understandably, between what's happened in the UK with our former ambassador and the way this is being brushed aside by the White House.
Rhiannon, it's bigger, it's better in some ways this time, unprecedented because it's a second state visit for someone who's already had one as well. To say they're rolling out the red carpet is an understatement. However, it's a red carpet we don't get to see as much of this time round.
No. And I just think it's really important kind of reflecting on, yes, tomorrow's going to be the big politics policy day. They're going to face that press conference. And that is why today is so important, because what they want to do today is really enforce on the president the foundations of friendship. This is what matters between our two countries. They want to make sure that he has the best day. And we saw that with President Macron as well. When he came over, there was the issues around immigration and small boats. But what happened here at Windsor Castle was making sure that the visiting head of state feels very welcome, feels very comfortable. They've had their time with members of the royal family, and therefore, hopefully, that then eases those further discussions. And ultimately, it's about making sure that Donald Trump leaves the UK feeling only positive about this country. And therefore, today, it will be reinforcing those memories. But yeah, if you're a member of the public, you are not going to see him in the flesh. You're going to have to watch us to get all those pictures.
Yeah.
And it is going to be a field day for the body language experts. Donald Trump, as he was leaving America, said he cannot wait to see the King. Kim was there for the first state visit, said he was absolutely on best behaviour when it came to meeting Queen Elizabeth.
Except for walking in front of her, of course, and
well, no,
breaching protocol.
that was 2018. So when he came for tea with the Queen, that happened. But actually, it was probably the Queen's mistake, because she was used to Prince Philip doing that.
No one would tell her.
But the optics didn't look good.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2019, we've discussed it, haven't we? He was literally charm personified.
Yes, he absolutely was. And you're right. That moment when he walked in front of her, the American team, I expect the president himself, were mortified and upset by it, but actually all the palace officials said it really wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
The Queen wasn't used to doing those inspections of guards of honour. Prince Philip used to do it.
Thank you both very much indeed for the time being. I mean, there's a lot of history here, of course, but it is a reminder that the UK was the dominant world force in the 19th century. The US certainly defined the 20th century. And Mari, back to you in Downing Street. There's going to be a compulsion, an interest in making Britain feel like it deserves that place on the world stage still.
Yeah, clearly, kind of bringing out all the most impressive pomp and circumstance for President Trump. But realistically, President Trump knows who holds the power when it comes to this relationship, and it is him. And that is why, to an extent, Keir Starmer has offered this second state visit in the first place, but also why there is a remarkable amount of jeopardy in these next 2 days. Keir Starmer needs to not only keep in Donald Trump's good books, but obviously wants to get things out of the Trump administration. They are wanting to talk trade. They are wanting to talk potentially about whiskey and salmon tariffs, talking about steel and aluminium tariffs that still, for now anyway, remain at 25%, which the Labour government is not happy about. And so there is a huge amount of work to be done there will be a level of disappointment, I think, if nothing comes out of some of those discussions at Chequers tomorrow. We know that the Prime Minister spoke to Trump on the phone last night when he landed in the UK, welcomed him to the UK, and we can really see that, to an extent, slight bromance between Starmer and Trump. And it will be on full display tomorrow to really kind of showcase the strength of the relationship between the US and the UK.
Mari, thank you very much indeed. We'll hear much more from Downing Street a bit later on, of course. We'll have much more from here at Windsor Castle too, as we anticipate the arrival of the President and First Lady. For the time being, Leah, back to you in the studio.
Thanks so much, Matt. We're going to move on now. The government has insisted its migrants return scheme with France is not a shambles after the High Court temporarily blocked a man's deportation. The 25-year-old from Eritrea, who crossed the Channel on a small boat, argued he'd face the risk of destitution if he was removed to France. Well, earlier, Government Minister Liz Kendall gave us her reaction to the decision.
Disappointed in that judgment. It is an interim judgment, but it will not stop this really important deal with France going ahead and giving a very strong message that if you come to this country illegally, you can and you will be deported. We're taking action now. I don't believe this is a silver bullet and it won't solve everything, but Shabana Mahmood, our new Home Secretary, is absolutely determined to make sure this, along with the other action we are taking to prevent work upstream, to prevent those criminal gangs in the first place, together, we are absolutely determined to tackle this problem.
Let's go live to Lisa Holland, who's in Paris. So the government there, Lisa, saying they're going to crack on with their one-in, one-out scheme despite any stumbling blocks.
I think the reality is that the government, in one sense, only has itself to blame when it's facing accusations that this one-in, one-out scheme is a shambles, because it was the government that itself set the hair running last weekend by saying that the first people would be sent back within a timescale which it described as imminent, and that was at the weekend, and it's now Wednesday. There are lots of people involved in this. There's a kind of umbrella of NGOs, charities, lawyers who are supporting the people the government wants to send back to France on a kind of case-by-case basis. So these NGOs are suggesting that ultimately they do think that somebody will be sent back, but that it was inevitable that there would be some kind of legal challenges and that was to be expected. So therefore, I don't think that this scheme can be written off just yet, and that even they do think that somebody ultimately will be returned to France. But the reality is that these charities, because they are in direct contact with these migrants, say that people were earmarked for flights on Monday, Tuesday and indeed today, and that, of course, as far as they know, so far no one has been put on any of those flights. So because it's being dealt with on a case-by-case basis, on the one hand you have this case of this Eritrean man whose removal direction has been deferred because the courts have decided that there needs to be further examination of his claim that he is being trafficked. That's just one example, one kind of insight into the kinds of problems that the government is facing.
OK, Lisa, thank you. That's Lisa Holland with the latest there for us in Paris. Now, we've also learned this morning that inflation is unchanged at 3.8%. We're talking to our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. So what's driving all of this then, Paul?
Yeah, so inflation is much higher than everyone would like. 3.8% is the figure for consumer price inflation announced this morning. That's the number for August. It's the same as the figure in July, so that is at least flat. There was the consensus of economists polled before this, as happens every month, as it would rise slightly. We can see the chart there, obviously much lower than that mountainous peak above 11% at the end of 2022, but it has been on the march upwards. You see the dotted line at 2%, that's the Bank of England's target. It did briefly fall below that in the middle of last year, but it has been on the rise ever since. What's been driving it? Well, there have been a variety of factors. Energy, always a factor. Food inflation is still rising. So this number, well, it is flat this month, and it's been held down by the fact that fuel prices at the pump and airfares the latter of which you might think of as a discretionary spend. Those have come down and help bring it down. Food inflation up to 5.1%. It's the 5th month in a row that food inflation has increased. And one of the drivers has been cereals, so bread and grains. That's actually fallen. But the increase here is vegetables, milk, and particularly cheese. So all the nice stuff is getting more expensive.
I was just thinking that, all the stuff my kids love.
Yeah, alcohol has gone up too. So if you wanted to numb the pain, that's... So while these numbers will be... it's too high, the government want it down, the Bank of England want it down, consumers, most of all, want it down. There is some... the fact it's being held down is welcome, but the stuff we don't have any choice about buying, food particularly, is still increasing. We expect it to peak, this increase, next month. Then energy price increases from a year ago that have pushed it up will drop out of the numbers, so maths alone should bring it down. Bank of England expect it to get back to 2%, but not till next year.
OK. All right, Paul, thank you as always. Really excellent stuff. Let's move on to some of the day's other stories now. And the main suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann is set to be released from prison in Germany today. The 49-year-old, known as Christian B, served a 7-year sentence for rape in an unrelated case. He's never been charged over the toddler's disappearance and denies any involvement. Ricky Hatton's son, Campbell, has addressed his father's death publicly for the first time. He posted on social media a series of family photos with this caption: "Heartbroken isn't the word, can't explain how much I'm going to miss the laughs we had and all the good times, which I will remember forever." Of course, the former boxing world champion, he died on Sunday, aged just 46. More than a quarter of driving tests in the UK are now taken in automatic vehicles. The AA driving school says the rise of electric cars is partly responsible, and it predicts a third of all tests will be carried out in automatics by 2027. Well, it's time to speak to the opposition now. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the Shadow Science and Technology Secretary, Julia Lopez. Very good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, nice to see you.
So this unprecedented state visit by Donald Trump, he's bringing tech, he's bringing investment. You must welcome that £30 billion US tech giants are bringing that here. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, broadly, we welcome it. I mean, it's important that we have a close relationship with the United States, particularly in sectors like tech, which is going to be so important to shaping the modern world. We've got a lot of talent here, we've got a lot of expertise, and I'm glad that the US recognises that. We left Labour with a thriving tech sector, and it's important that they continue to build on that. So we broadly welcome this, but what I want to know is exactly what's under the bonnet, and we don't get the details of that until Thursday. At the moment, we have a very nice headline. Great, sounds very good, but what's actually going on underneath it? The Prime Minister is in quite a weak position, and the President understands that, and he will be extracting maximum value for US tech companies. So I want to know whether this is genuinely a good deal for UK tech and also for British people.
So your assessment of Keir Starmer and Donald Trump's relationship is, you say it's weakened?
No, I'm saying that the President is a well-known deal maker. He will recognise that politically the Prime Minister needs this to be a success and for their presentationally to be a good deal between the US and the UK. Therefore, he will be able to extract from the Prime Minister things that the US wants. And so we need to understand exactly what has been extracted for this deal.
But we're hearing it's £30 billion. That has to be a good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, we welcome US tech investment. It's extremely important. But as I say, these things aren't always as clear-cut as they might appear, and whether there's been any changes in relation to things like the Digital Services Tax, the Online Safety Act, and all of these things, we have to have a better understanding. Also, I mean, the price of energy is extremely high in the UK. So it's interesting that there's so much investment in data centres. We want to understand what the impact is. Why is it that US tech seems to have overlooked some of the challenges that US pharma were saying were present in the UK economy last week? We've seen the withdrawal of a very important tech investment in King's Cross. That's £1 billion lost from a US pharma company. And we want to understand why is US tech able to perceive this situation in a different way in relation to tax and regulation, and whether there's been any changes offered to them.
What would you be doing differently? Because this is a big headline, isn't it? It's £30 billion that's invested in this country. That's confidence in the UK.
Yeah, and look, as I say, we broadly welcome it. But what I don't understand yet is exactly what are the details of this deal. We only get that information on Thursday. So, the headline is we welcome it. But just like the situation with steel tariffs, for instance, where there was a lot of talk about there being zero tariffs, now it turns out that there might be 25% steel tariffs, still a better deal than a lot of other countries, but not exactly what was promised. So all I'm saying is I want to understand exactly what is under the bonnet of this deal. I'm not going to give Labour a blank cheque if it turns out that they may have traded something that's important to this country.
Let's move on to the one-in, one-out deal. We're hearing it's blocked. This Eritrean person, 25, came over on a small boat. That's been blocked by the High Court. Your reaction to that?
Well, so far it looks like it's all in with Labour deals and no out. And what could happen at the weekend is that France actually send more people over to us in the asylum deal that they've created, and we're not able to shift anybody out of this country. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. And what we were trying to do with the Rwanda deal was extremely complicated and challenging and difficult, but it was something that was going to deal with a cohort of people where they may give up their passports or whatever, who have effectively rendered themselves stateless. What Labour's trying to do is deport people to an ally where these people were just days before, and they haven't been able to do that. It begs serious questions about Labour's deportations policy and whether they can do anything to stem the arrival of people on small boats.
But why do you think people should then trust the Conservatives under that Rwanda scheme that you mentioned just then? How many people did you send back? It didn't stop the small boats coming. It wasn't seen, perhaps to many who want to get here, as a deterrent. In fact, you sent more Home Secretaries to Rwanda than people.
We have the bruises on us from the difficulty of the Rwanda policy. What we were trying to do is very ambitious and important, and we were trying to make the case to the courts that was an important policy and it had legitimacy. We understand the challenges of doing this, and I cannot believe how naive Labour have been in thinking that they can simply say smash the gangs and expect that that's going to lead to results. They are extremely naive when it comes to immigration policy. This is why we have moved our policy on quite substantially since the general election, because we understand that this is filled with legal complexity and that we actually need to put in some of the policies that will change that legal complexity.
So this chap that has been blocked by the High Court, does then everyone in the party agree that leaving the ECHR will fix the problem?
Well, this is something that's under live consideration right now. We've charged Lord Wolfson with a comprehensive piece of work to see if we were to leave the ECHR, what would that entail and how could we operationalise that? And that's something that Kemi will be speaking about more at party conference.
OK, we'll leave it there. Julia Lopez, really appreciate you coming in to talk to us on Breakfast. We do have some breaking news to bring you here on The Breakfast Show. We've been told that Christian B has been released from a prison in Germany. He's been serving a 7-year prison sentence for an unrelated crime. He has since been released from that prison sentence. We'll bring you more on that story after a short break.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Welcome back to Windsor. We are here, of course, for the unprecedented second state visit of President Donald Trump and his wife, Melania, due here later on this morning, perhaps around lunchtime as well. And then we're going to see certainly all sorts of movement going on. A lot of it's going to be behind closed doors, behind the walls of Windsor Castle. But we are going to get a flyover at some point by the Red Arrows and F-35s, which could well see his arrival in a helicopter into the grounds. What we're not going to see is a horse procession, a ride in a carriage through the streets of Windsor, as we've seen before, but security has put paid to that possibility. I'm joined now by our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills and also the former UK ambassador to the US, Lord Darrach, Kim Darrach. It's an important point there, isn't it, Kim? I know you've been involved with countless state visits in your previous life as an ambassador. This one is different in terms of scale, but also in terms of privacy.
Yes, it is. I remember in the first state visit, we were worried about demonstrations and how that would look on camera. And actually, the then Trump team in the White House said, we're quite happy for you to keep us away from the public, really, just to do it. So we did all of that visit in a little group between Clarence House and Buckingham Palace and Number 10. And this one is all basically behind those walls there and then in checkers. And look, security has to be extraordinarily tight with the American president. So it's quite reasonable that it should be as tough as it is. But also, they don't want photographs or film of the president against a backdrop of demonstrations.
Yeah, yeah. And we saw, I think, Rhiannon, people remember the Trump blimp that went up into the air the past day or so. We've seen huge images of Jeffrey Epstein beamed onto the walls of this old castle as well. The protests are going to happen regardless of what the president does or doesn't see.
Yeah, and today the pictures will be spectacular here at Windsor Castle. You can't completely erase the backdrop of everything that's been going on in the run-up to this state visit. So, yeah, it was quite something to see those pictures being beamed onto the side of the castle yesterday, kind of a rolling picture book of Jeffrey Epstein, of Donald Trump, also Virginia Giuffre, who, of course, the royal family do not want to be reminded of because of the links to Prince Andrew. Interestingly, though, I was talking to someone who has been heavily involved in arranging this trip, and they were here at the time of those pictures, and they went, well, America's criticised us for not allowing free speech. That is free speech on the side of that castle. So,
that's a good
so
point.
At least they were kind of looking at it sort of positively. But yeah, look, the barriers running around Windsor Castle are huge. Everything is being done to make sure that the president doesn't see anything that's going to upset him, I suppose.
Just a very quick word, Rhiannon. You mentioned Prince Andrew there. He was out in public for the Duchess of Kent's funeral yesterday.
An
is he going to be involved?
gasp, apparently, when he appeared.
Yeah, he's not going to be involved today, is he?
No, not at all. And
that would be awkward.
It'd be really awkward, but what's interesting is he does live on the Windsor estate. He lives at Royal Lodge, so he will be in such close proximity to everything that's going on. And he was heavily involved in that first state visit because of his links with business as a trade envoy. But no, we will not see him. He would be a very unwelcome distraction. And of course, he's no longer a working royal.
Rhiannon, Kim, thanks for the time being. Let's head straight back to Leah in the studio now.
Matt, thank you. The main suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been released from prison in Germany. 49-year-old Christian B served a 7-year sentence for rape. This was in an unrelated case. He's never been charged over the toddler's disappearance, and he denies any involvement. Take a look at these latest pictures for you. They're from outside the prison. Here they are. And we presume that Christian B is in one of those vehicles. He's been in prison, as we said, for 7 years. Let's go live to our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt. This is a huge moment, Martin. Just tell us what you saw and the implications.
He was in one of those vehicles. He was in the black Audi driven by his lawyer and given that 4 police van escort. So in the last 20 minutes, it was a short walk and a fast car to freedom for Christian B. His lawyer was allowed to drive into the prison. He got into the car there after some processing of his departure. And then with that police van escort, they sped away from the prison. And we really don't have any idea where he's headed. Presumably his lawyer, Friedrich Fulcher, is going to take him some way from this area. He was, when he was last a free man in Germany, living in Braunschweig, which is about 45 minutes drive from here. I can't imagine for a moment that he'll go back there, because he has alienated, because of the emergence of his criminal past and the suspicion about Madeleine McCann case. He won't be welcome there, and it's difficult to know where he will go, but he is rather restricted in his movements, because we learned overnight that the prison authorities got permission to fit him with an ankle bracelet, an electronic tag. He's had to surrender his passport, so he has to stay within Germany, and he has to give the probation authorities a note of where he's living, and if he wants to change where he's living, then again that has to be re-registered. So we don't know whether he's got family or friends who are going to help him to readjust to life on the outside, but he's a free man, although he remains the suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, because the German prosecutor who's in charge of this case has made it clear in interviews recently, and certainly told me in an interview 2 weeks ago, that he is the only suspect, and investigators will pursue him as that suspect and continue to look for evidence they hope will give them enough evidence to charge him. Remember that he's never been questioned by the German authorities, he's never been arrested, and he's certainly not been charged in the Madeleine case, although that prosecutor has repeatedly said that he believes that Christian B is the abductor and the murderer of Madeleine McCann. So he's in a pretty invidious position for a man who's just won his freedom. And I should point out that he's been released here today because he's just completed a 7-year sentence for an unrelated rape.
OK, for now, Martin, thank you. Martin Brunt there with the very latest. Christian B has been released from a German prison.
Thank you very much indeed, Leah. Still got Lord Darroch and Rhiannon, our royal correspondent, here with me. We were just discussing, Ken, you mentioned last time we were chatting that, of course, the principles are key here. The King, the Prime Minister, the President, of course. I'm interested to understand a bit more about those side meetings that are going on, those other bilats, as they call them, bilateral meetings. We hear that the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is going to be meeting with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, for example. A lot could come out of these discussions, couldn't it?
Yeah, state visits are big because the President brings a big entourage with him, opportunities for discussions, bilaterals, at a whole series of different levels.
Yeah.
And the one I would pick out is the Cooper-Rubio talks, because there is so much going on globally. First of all, difficult discussions potentially on Ukraine, because the American proposal seems to be that if we Europeans want America to put more pressure on Putin, we need to be prepared to levy heavy tariffs on China and India over their oil purchases from Russia. And that's, I mean, we will want to put pressure on Putin, but that proposal is very, very tricky. So there's that, and then of course there's Gaza, which gets worse, looks worse every day, and where I think the Americans are genuinely trying to get a ceasefire, but they're not managing to persuade Netanyahu of this.
And the UK government not wishing to respond to that UN commission yesterday reporting that they believe genocide is being committed there as well. Kim, thanks for the time being around, thanks too. As President Trump arrived in the UK, the government said it had struck a tech deal with the US that could bring billions of pounds of investment into the UK, more than 30 billion, in fact. Our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, has more on this. Gurpreet, more to you. Vitally important for the economy here.
Sorry, just spoke over you there, but I think I heard your question. Yeah, I mean, the government is making a big deal of this. Some were describing it as an AI invasion. You know, this was the big hitters of the US tech scene all arriving in the UK, the likes of OpenAI, Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, all of them pledging billions of pounds to expand the AI industry in the UK. And that includes investment in research, in engineering, but also the big one in data centres. And that's sort of the digital infrastructure that you need to meet the processing demands of AI. Think of it as if you're developing a new car that also needs new roads to go along with it. And Britain, while we have an enormous amount of talent and cutting-edge innovation here in the country, and that's something many of the tech leaders yesterday pointed to, we don't have that digital infrastructure at the scale that we need it to be at in order to power this so-called AI revolution. And this deal is helping to address some of those challenges. And alongside it, we also got a slew of nuclear deals as well. And that's all because building these data centres also requires a huge amount of demand on energy. It's expected that the energy demands of these data centres could increase fourfold over the coming years. And loads of concerns about Britain's creaking electricity grid, whether we can meet those demands, but also really high energy costs. So we also got an announcement on building new nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, which are sort of more affordable, smaller reactors than your typical large-scale products. It's something that governments have spoken about in the past. The ambition has been there for some time, but this is now being packaged up alongside with those tech deals. And the hope is that by powering AI in this country, we could unlock a number of benefits, not just on growth and on productivity, but also gaining greater control over the data surrounding AI in this country, a phrase called AI sovereignty that you may hear a lot about over the coming years. So definitely a win for the government. It's something they're celebrating intensely, but a number of challenges still lie ahead, and we're sure that those will be examined over the coming months and years.
No doubt, Gurpreet, thank you very much indeed. Well, thousands of people are expected to demonstrate against President Trump's state visit today with a rally planned at Parliament Square in London. Let's have a chat now to Nick Dearden, who is Director of Global Justice Now, which is part of the Stop Trump coalition. Nick, good morning to you. What's your day looking like then?
We are hoping that from 2 o'clock we are going to have tens of thousands of people on the streets in London. And they represent, I would say, a small fraction of people in this country who are frustrated, angry, disappointed that our government has given Donald Trump the honour of this second state visit, because we simply do not believe that this is a guy who deserves such an honour.
Is it just a state visit for him, or is it more about maintaining the relationship between the two countries, regardless of who is in the White House?
Well, Keir Starmer thinks that by appeasing and grovelling to Trump, he's going to get a better deal than anybody else in the world, and that's going to be good for us. I would say the evidence from today does not support that claim. If you look at the tariff deal he signed a few months ago, that hasn't for the main part, been implemented still. They still haven't got an agreement on steel. We haven't changed the American president's mind fundamentally on Ukraine, on Gaza, or anything else. So I think Donald Trump's getting a good deal. And your correspondent there mentioned this tech deal that had just been signed. We're really worried about that. I mean, that's a deal that was signed between the former ambassador, Lord Mandelson, and Trump's administration. We have still not had sight of what's in that deal, but we're concerned this investment is not coming for free. And part of what the American titans, Trump's oligarch mates who are with him this week, are going to be asking for is less regulation, less taxation in this country. And that means that it's much, much harder for us to protect our public interest. I think the Prime Minister needs to put the people of this country and their principles ahead of appeasing the American president.
Nevertheless, Nick, you may accept that in doing that kind of thing, in pushing what you say, which no doubt a lot of people would agree with, there would then be a price to pay. And we're in a different world now. Whatever people think of Donald Trump, he's arguably one of the most consequential presidents that has been in the White House. And those days of globalization are gone. Protectionism is rife. Yes, the government would say there are still tariffs, but they would argue they're in a slightly better position than many other countries. I guess they might say they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
Look, it's not an easy situation, and nobody's saying it is, but I would definitely dispute the Prime Minister's claim that he's got a better deal, because the EU essentially has got pretty much the same deal as we have, and we know that Donald Trump doesn't like the EU at all. Look, I think there comes a time in international politics where you've got to stand behind some principles, and this is a guy who is driving his own country down a deeply authoritarian path, who's using tools of economic warfare against friend and foe alike. And one of the interesting things is we're going to have quite a lot of American expats on the demonstration today, and what they're saying to us is we're desperately fighting for our rights as this guy is kidnapping people off the streets and ignoring court orders and militarizing cities. By extending this guy a second state visit, you're making that harder. And one of the key messages that we've got today is to the American people to say, please don't give up, please keep going, we're in solidarity with you.
Nick Dearden, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
you. Much more still to come from Windsor here on Breakfast, as we anticipate the arrival in this historic place of Donald Trump and the First Lady, Melania. Look, you can see from that shot of Windsor Castle in all its glory, it's not exactly bathed in sunshine this morning, a little bit grey, a little bit drizzly as well. Nevertheless, they'll be putting the finishing touches to all the pomp and pageantry that they're throwing at this second state visit. Much more coming up after the break.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped. Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay. Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Hello, welcome back to Breakfast. Now, movie stars and film fans alike have been paying tribute to Hollywood legend Robert Redford after his death. He was aged 89. Now, the actor became much of an icon behind the camera as he was in front of it, and was a great champion of independent film, wasn't he? Debbie is here to talk about this. He had such a charisma on screen.
Such a charisma on screen and off screen as well. Any conversation that you see with him on camera, even if it's a red carpet and you see him in the corner, you could just sense his presence from that. And I suppose there's been such an outpouring of love from all of Hollywood as well as all of his fans. But yesterday I was at the premiere for One Battle After Another, which is the new Leonardo DiCaprio film. And I actually caught up with Leo and asked him about what he believes is the legacy of Robert.
Get away from me.
Why?
I want to fight him.
He'll kill us.
Maybe.
You want to die?
Do you?
All right. I'll jump first.
No.
Then you jump first.
No, I said.
What's the matter with you?
I can't swim.
Why, are you crazy? The fall will probably kill you.
And, you know, when we talk about charisma, it was for that role that you really saw that on display. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Exactly.
Huge.
And that's the thing, like Leo calling him a hero of his, and hearing that from Leonardo DiCaprio, who is such a big name in Hollywood nowadays. But a lot of people, maybe the younger generations, wouldn't have known Robert because of him being in the 70s and the 80s. And so when you think of him, he was pretty much your favourite actor's favourite actor. It's a good way to explain who he actually is. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, of course, that being the nickname that then he created the Sundance Film Festival from, which was just a platform to celebrate independent films, low-budget films, and first-time filmmakers as well, which hadn't really been... There hadn't been a platform for artists like that before, because mainstream media with the Oscars and the Golden Globes kind of looking at the big studios before that. So a lot of celebration of the life that he lived in Hollywood today.
Yeah, and it was also that activism that stood him apart from the rest as well, really.
Very much so. He was one of the first actors to actually publicly speak about environmentalism. He actually spoke before Congress, at the UN, at climate summits as well throughout the years. And Leonardo DiCaprio as well followed suit with that and had been at various summits with him. So he is one of these big faces and big names in Hollywood that people really base their careers off as well, saying, I want to be like you.
All right, Debbie, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's hand back now to Matt Barbette at Windsor Castle.
Thank you very much indeed, Leah. Yes, sad about Robert Redford, phenomenal actor, absolute icon of the stage and screen. Well, the screen, really. I'm joined here at Windsor by Rana Mills, our royal correspondent, and Lord Darragh, Kim Darragh, who's the former British ambassador to the US. It just occurs to me, we can see, Kim, over your shoulder, the police presence here. Now, you may not realise, but those officers are from the police service of Northern Ireland. They've got more of a green tinge to their uniforms as it happens. That just gives us a sense of how big this operation is. Sure, when big things happen in London, the Met will pull in support from the home counties, from South Wales. But getting these officers over from Northern Ireland shows how seriously they're taking all this.
Yeah. Everything starts with security, Matt. Nothing is more important than keeping your esteemed visitor safe. And there is no bigger challenge than the American president coming over. And even though this entire state visit is going to be either behind the walls of the castle or in Chequers, but also behind a tight security cordon, you need a lot of people to make sure this goes well.
Yeah.
So it'll be the absolute first priority, and they will have squared everything with the US security around the president as well. So there'll be a lot of preparation here.
And the backdrop to this, Rhiannon, yes, we're going to see protests. The majority of protests want it peaceful. But we've also seen in the US political violence in recent days with Charlie Kirk. We've had political violence in the UK as well. David Amos, Joe Cox, to name two victims of that. That's going to be at the back of people's minds if someone wants to try and do something stupid.
Yeah, it reinforces in our minds that there are some out there who, if they have the intent, they will try as hard as they can to get as close as they can to the principals who are there front and centre for this state visit. And don't forget, these pictures will be beamed all around the world.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for UK PLC, not just for it to look spectacular, but also for it to be safe. I can't forget kind of President Macron's state visit, where he was literally down the high street in the carriages. That must have been an absolute nightmare for the police. Actually, speaking to some of those involved in the security operation today, they say in some ways the fact that the president is within the confines of Windsor Castle does make it a little bit easier, but still they've erected these enormous steel barriers right around the Long Walk, which is that usual spectacular scene that we see. They are taking no risks on this one.
Kim, very quick word, 20 seconds or so, on the soft power, these pictures being beamed around the world, beamed back to the US. That helps UK PLC, does it, as Rihanna mentioned there?
Matt, tens of thousands of jobs in this country depend on our commercial economic relations with America. Our security is tightly bound up with America. They're the leaders in NATO. Okay. So this is a real opportunity to cement those links and to make the best of it.
Thank you both. And it's pictures like these. Look at that history. More from Windsor Castle shortly.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Good morning, I'm Matt Barbette, live from Windsor on Breakfast this hour. Pomp, pageantry and protests. The US president flies in with praise for the king and a promise of a big day ahead.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
But there are protests as well. Images of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein are beamed onto the walls here of Windsor Castle. And alongside the ceremony, a boost for Britain's AI industry, with some of America's largest tech firms pledging billions in investment.
Also ahead, the main suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann is released from prison after serving a sentence on unrelated charges. Blocked by the courts, the government is still to deport a single migrant back to France under its return deal.
I'll jump first. No. Then you jump first. No, I said. What's the matter with you? I can't swim!
And Hollywood says goodbye to one of its all-time greats, Robert Redford, who has died at the age of 89.
Good morning, good to have you with us. We're live in Windsor this morning, where in the coming hours the US President Donald Trump and First Lady will fly in by helicopter, land in the grounds of this historic castle and meet the King and Queen. We have a huge couple of days ahead here, and today we're expecting a carriage procession, a flypast by the Red Arrows and a state banquet, to name but a few things. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills is here with us in Windsor as well. We're not in Westminster, and we're also joined by former British ambassador to the US, Lord Darrach, as well. Kim, if I can come to you first, let's just separate out the 2 days. The pomp and pageantry here at Windsor is what's happening today. Tomorrow, the substance at Chequers, the real discussion, getting down to brass tacks. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of disagreement on Gaza, on handling Ukraine, and primarily a lot of British businesses will be looking for some signs that those tariffs are going to be lifted, not least on steel and aluminium.
Absolutely right, Matt. On the one side, we look like we've got the best trade deal of any country and that our tariffs are only at 10%. But these tariffs are meant to be about correcting big trade imbalances. And according to America's own figures, they run a surplus with us. So there's really no justification for these tariffs at all. And, for example, our steel industry is still at 25%, not at 10%. And we would very much like to get that down at least to 10, but ideally to 0. So this is bound to be a big issue during the discussions over the next, over the course of tomorrow. Plus, of course, it's important to talk about Gaza, about Ukraine, the big international issues on which we all want to end the fighting.
Rhiannon, those are the serious issues that the government would like to come away with something on. When it comes to the niceties, the pomp, the pageantry of today, there are gifts going to be given, and we hear that there was discussion of giving Donald Trump a red box of his own. Of course, they're the red boxes that the King has, government ministers have, all made by a specific company, initials on there as well. There's been some friction there. We don't know if it's going to be given or not. We'll get a list later on, though, won't we, of the gifts?
We do. We always get a list of gifts. Sometimes you have to they're slightly obscure, so you have to unpick, well, why have they decided to give that to the visiting dignitary? But we know that there are certain things that Donald Trump loves. Kim, you were saying he loves his mementos. He loves kind of collecting things. We know he's got this fascination in Churchill, anything to do with military history. So I suspect they'll be kind of trying to tick some of those boxes. Yeah. But today, what is so important is, yes, this is state-to-state relationships. It's also family-to-family. And what we're going to see again today is ultimately the royal family stepping up as our diplomats-in-chief. They have been here many times before. They have had to host other controversial leaders. They know the part that they have to play. And look, no one is being coy or shy about how big a deal this is. It's being described as the largest military ceremonial display for a state visit in living memory. They are literally rolling out every bit of red carpet they can possibly find.
We are here all day. We'll bring you all of those pictures, even if we won't necessarily see the president in the flesh here on the streets of Windsor. He arrived later than expected last night at Stansted Airport. Our US correspondent Mark Stone was there as well.
Touchdown for Air Force One and an historic second state visit to the UK for President Donald Trump. A smile and a spring in his step, maybe, because he's been looking forward to this. On the tarmac, protocol dictates it's the Foreign Secretary to greet him, Yvette in the job just a couple of weeks, and hoping no one remembers her visceral criticism of the president in the past. He is the man she called a threat to democracy in 2019, abandoning allies, she said, a misogynist. He may still be that to many, but now, unlike then, he holds the cards and he calls the shots.
And so that's what this second state visit is all about. It is an acceptance from the UK that it's not just important to be close to America. The British government's position is that it's vital to be close to Trump's America. It is in their national interest for trade, for security and for foreign policy.
Arriving at the US ambassador's residence in Regent's Park for his first night, the president gave a clear indication of just how much this moment of British pomp means to him.
He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
The British charm offensive began in February.
This is unprecedented, and I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us.
Starmer ignored the critics, and it paid off, a trade deal of sorts. Certainly the UK was put in a better position than most, if not all other countries globally.
The relationship that we have is fantastic, because I like them, that's why. That's their ultimate protection.
It was, of course, the now fired ambassador, Peter Mandelson, who got that deal, the reward of appointing him before the risk did it for him.
Peter Mandelson actually did broker a real relationship with MAGA. I mean, it was an incredible act of shape-shifting, but he did it.
Lord Maurice Glassman knows Trump well, a Labour peer close to Team Trump, a rare thing.
It's hard to overestimate the extent to which he sees himself as a king. I mean, this is real. I mean, very, very real. So it's a huge change, this administration, from the republic to a monarchy. I mean, it's that big. I compare Trump to Julius Caesar or Napoleon, who did that change.
Dump Trump! Dump Trump! Dump Trump!
For now, the protests don't match those from the last state visit. Not close.
He's a friend of a paedophile. He's a convicted felon. I don't think a man like that should be in this country with all this pomp and ceremony laid on for him.
That paedophile is Jeffrey Epstein, and he is the jeopardy here, projected by protesters onto the walls of Windsor Castle. More than awkward, but then it is striking, extraordinary even, that all three central characters over the next 2 days are associated with Epstein. Trump's friendship is historic, but he can't shake it. Starmer, now threatened by the Mandelson link, and then by association through his brother, the King linked too. Of course, the other gamble is that this is a president who changes his mind, shifts position. The next few days are Britain's attempt to prevent that, to cement the special relationship. Mark Stone, Sky News in Stansted.
Well, let's have a closer look now at what is planned for President Trump's state visit over the next couple of days. The President and the First Lady will arrive here at Windsor Castle this morning. They will be greeted by the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine, of course, before then being formally welcomed by the King and Queen as a royal salute is fired both here in Windsor and also at the Tower of London. A carriage procession will then take them all on a route through the Windsor estate, not on the streets of Windsor as we've seen before. And that's before the King and the President inspect the Guard of Honour at Windsor Castle. They will have lunch together with members of the royal family in the state dining room. The President and the First Lady will then visit St George's Chapel to lay a wreath on the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II. Later on, Mr Trump and his wife will join the King and Queen to watch a flypast by the Red Arrows. A state banquet is following this evening with both the King and President set to give speeches there. Looking ahead to tomorrow, the President will arrive at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence, of course, to a Guard of Honour there, where Donald Trump will have a bilateral meeting with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. Later on, both leaders will attend a business reception hosted by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and a press conference is expected to follow after that. The PM will then bid farewell to the President as the state visit draws to a close. Kim Darroch, former UK ambassador to the US, is still with me now. Kim, just as we've got you for the last few moments, what's your sort of final thought, your final take, if you like, on the next couple of days?
This is Trump's second state visit. only American president ever to get that. And so you have to ask yourself, why are we treating him this way? And I think the answer is largely about this is a president who has broken the mold of the post-war American presidents, who is changing the face of the world, and whose actions affect a huge number of vital British interests. And this state visit, behind the pageantry, is an opportunity to have 2 days with this guy trying to move him on issues which really matter to us. So all eyes on the press conference tomorrow, and we'll see how we've got on. But this is actually a huge opportunity to forward British interests and objectives.
Kim, great to have you. Lord Darrett there, former British ambassador to the US. Rhiannon, of course, is with us all day here on Sky News, our royal correspondent, to tell us all about the intricacies of the next couple of days. Look, Donald Trump's state visit comes at a crucial time for the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. Our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, is in Downing Street for us now. And Mari, the Prime Minister's had a pretty rough 3 weeks, to put it lightly, losing the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, having to sack one of Kim's successors in Peter Mandelson, amongst other trials and tribulations. I'm sure he's been effectively limping towards this moment and an opportunity to look important on the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And while that debate around Peter Mandelson was going on, let's not forget there were some people who were saying actually perhaps the PM ought to hang on to Mandelson at least until the end of the state visit and make sure that Mandelson is kind of in the camp for this state visit. Clearly that didn't happen, and now the PM is in a situation where he will be hoping and praying that in that press conference tomorrow Mandelson will not come up, immigration will not come up, free speech will not come up. So many areas, Gaza as well, in which perhaps there could be some difficulty in terms of the questioning from journalists and, of course, Donald Trump's responses, depending on what he says. The other difficulty for the Prime Minister, if we look at what he's wanting to get out of this trip for a moment, well, of course, he wants to talk about trade, he wants to talk about that big tech AI deal that they've announced this morning and the amount of money it's going to bring into the economy, the jobs it will bring and the prosperity. He's also concerned, of course, about tariffs. We are still not there yet when it comes to a steel and aluminium deal, when it comes to the fact that the ambition of the British government was to have a zero tariff deal. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon, at least. And, of course, the fact that actually Trump's popularity here in the UK isn't great. And actually, if you look at some of the polling that came out yesterday, the British public don't necessarily think it's a good idea that Keir Starmer is kind of cozying up to Trump. And that's what the Lib Dems have been bringing up a lot in the chamber over the past few months. So Keir Starmer has a fine balancing act over the past couple of days. We understand that he's already spoken to Trump last night when he did land, and then an all-important day tomorrow at Chequers.
Mari and Downing Street, thank you very much indeed. Look, we've been hearing from protesters in the past hour, hearing from Kim Darroch as well, different perspectives on the situation here regarding the state visit. But what is undeniable is that real sense of last-minute preparations being put in place. You know it's a hive of activity behind me in that historic castle. We're seeing police officers from all over Great Britain and Northern Ireland, in fact, here in Windsor with that security operation, which is massive and going on as well. The sense of anticipation is certainly here, Leah. Back to you for now.
OK, brilliant stuff. Thank you, Matt. The main suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been released from prison in Germany. 49-year-old, known as Christian B, served a 7-year sentence for rape. This was an unrelated case. He's never been charged over the toddler's disappearance and denies any involvement. Elsewhere, the government has insisted its migrant return scheme with France isn't a shambles after the High Court temporarily blocked a man's deportation. Now, the 25-year-old from Eritrea, who crossed the Channel on a small boat, argued that he would face the risk of destitution if he was removed to France. Well, earlier, Government Minister Liz Kendall gave us her reaction to the decision. We also heard from the Conservatives.
Disappointed in that judgment. It is an interim judgment, but it will not stop this really important deal with France going ahead and giving a very strong message that if you come to this country illegally, you can and you will be deported. We're taking action now. I don't believe this is a silver bullet and it won't solve everything, but Shabana Mahmood, our new Home Secretary, is absolutely determined to make sure this, along with the other action we are taking to work upstream, to prevent those criminal gangs in the first place, together, we are absolutely determined to tackle this problem.
So far, it looks like it's all in with Labour deals and no out. And what could happen at the weekend is that France actually send more people over to us in the asylum deal that they've created, and we're not able to shift anybody out of this country. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. And what we were trying to do with the Rwanda deal was extremely complicated and challenging and difficult, but it was something that was going to deal with a cohort of people where they may give up their passports or whatever, who have effectively rendered themselves stateless. What Labour's trying to do is deport people to an ally where these people were just days before, and they haven't been able to do that. It begs serious questions about Labour's deportations policy and whether they can do anything to stem the arrival of people on small boats.
Let's go live to Lisa Holland. She's in Paris for us this morning. Lisa, despite the criticism there from the opposition and the delays, the government say they're pressing on with this plan.
Well, of course, the government set this sense of expectation, set the hair running themselves by saying last weekend that the first people would be returned under this one in, one out scheme. Imminently, that was their word. And although they've said that they don't want to provide a running commentary on efforts to return people to France, we know that the migrants who have been given these removal directions, so-called removal directions, and been told that they were going to be put on flights, are being supported by various charities, various legal organisations. And so those charities and lawyers are almost kind of filling the information vacuum, if you like, saying that, yes, they were aware, according to them, that some of the migrants were due to be on flights on Monday and Tuesday. So those efforts have clearly been thwarted. But the government is saying, look, we always potentially expected legal delays. And I think the charities would agree with that. And there is certainly a sense with one charity that I spoke to that ultimately this scheme will succeed. But it's being dealt with on a case-by-case basis, which illustrates just how complex it is to send people back to France. And certainly small numbers are not really going to cut it for the government.
OK, Lisa, thank you. Let's take you through some of the day's other stories now. The man accused of killing the right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk has appeared in court via video link. Tyler Robinson was seen for the first time since his arrest and spoke only to confirm his name. Prosecutors in Utah say they're seeking the death penalty for the 22-year-old. Ricky Hatton's son, Campbell, has addressed his father's death publicly for the first time. He posted on social media a series of family photos with the caption, "Heartbroken isn't the word. Can't explain how much I'm going to miss the laughs we had and all the good times which I will remember forever." Of course, the former boxing world champion died on Sunday. He was 46 years old. And more than a quarter of driving tests in the UK are now taken in automatic vehicles. The AA Driving School says the rise of electric cars is partly responsible. They predict a third of all tests will be carried out in automatics by 2027. Inflation has remained unchanged at 3.8%. Let's go straight to our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso. He's got more. What do people at home need to know this morning, Paul?
Well, inflation is the bit of economic data that most directly affects all of us. It affects the prices we pay for everything. This latest data shows a little bit of respite from what's been a grim picture. We're all familiar with that huge mountainous spike. This is the number of CPI inflation back in 2022. It dropped briefly below this darker blue line here, the 2% target the Bank of England sets. But it's been on the march. 3.8%, the number released today for inflation in August. Actually the same as July, so expectations of a small increase didn't come to pass, but this is still high and unwelcome. Most unwelcome of all underlying these numbers, while there have been some downward pressures, fuel at the pump, for example, cheaper in August, food inflation continues to rise. The fifth month that food inflation has risen up above 5% for the first time since 2023. Beef and dairy, milk, very expensive. Cheese, particularly, almost twice as much the rate of inflation for cheese in August as in July. So all the nice stuff is getting more expensive. Alcohol too. How do we compare with the rest of the world, with our G7 peers? Well, not well. The UK at 3.8% inflation is an outlier. Interesting, we're talking about President Trump coming today, trade deals and the tariff war that he began. 2.9% American inflation. Tariffs, of course, an import tax effectively paid by American consumers. Interesting to see the political impact of that. But if we look at our European peers, Germany 2.1%, the Eurozone as a whole similar, the same. Canada 1.9%, France 0.8%. Actually, that, when it's a bit low, that can cause a problem too. But the UK has a high inflation picture. The big question from that is, what is the Bank of England going to do with interest rates? Well, this red line at the end here, the market expectation for interest rates. There's an MPC policy committee meeting tomorrow. The markets do not expect a rate cut. In fact, they don't expect the next one till 2026. So rates stuck, inflation stuck, all indicative perhaps of an economy that's a little bit stuck.
OK, Paul, thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show, Matt Robett will be live from Windsor. He'll be speaking to historian Sir Anthony Snelden about President Trump's unprecedented second state visit.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Welcome back to Windsor Castle. In a moment, I'll be speaking to Sir Anthony Selden, the well-known historian and author. But first, let's have a word with Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green, who is Captain of the Guard of Honour here at Windsor Castle. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I was going to say this is the calm before the storm, which is not necessarily intended as a pun, but you've got a busy day ahead.
I do have a reasonably busy day, only playing a small part in what is a big show, big state event. So looking forward to it. A little bit nervous. A few hours before kick-off, I suppose, but keen to be involved and to meet the President.
How much practice goes in ahead of this?
For us as dismounted troops, it's normally about 2 weeks' worth of rehearsal beforehand, some of which is done here at the castle, and a lot of which is done up at our home barracks around the country. And for me, that's Wellington Barracks in central London.
Any nerves at all?
Yes, yeah. I mean, just sort of walking amongst the troops and travelling down here. Plenty of discussion, plenty of nerves, but I'm a keen sportsman as well, so I guess it's a bit akin to walking across the whitewash in a rugby game or the rope in a cricket match. Yeah. And that bit of nervousness hopefully means we'll perform.
It's the anticipation that's nervous. Once you get on with it, then it just becomes almost second nature, does it?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes, it does. I mean, I still occasionally struggle a little bit with sequencing of my words of command, so while you're trying to enjoy occasions like this, you do just need to pinch yourself every now and again to remember what you've actually got to do, rather than just soaking it in.
You're carrying the bearskin now. Obviously, you wear it on your head. Is it heavy?
No, they're not heavy at all. They're pretty light, wicker on the inside, and a small curb chain at the bottom, which effectively used to, in 18th and 19th century battles, protect my face from sabre slashes as cavalrymen came by and tried to cut my head off.
Let's set the context of this, and I'm not going to ask you what you think about the whole thing, because that's not what you're here to discuss. But this is huge today. This is one of the biggest appearances by the British military for a state visit like this. You will be aware of the preparations of all your other colleagues as well. What's that been like?
Yeah, significant preparation. I mean, the toughest bit is probably the coordination of it all. You know, here between police, aviation authorities, the military, the Royal Palace, etc. But for us as dismounted troops, it's sort of our day job. And so while there are obviously specifics to the parade, they've been relatively straightforward to learn for us as ceremonial troops. We've got troops from the Navy and the Royal Air Force as well, who don't necessarily do those very often, so a bit more preparation for them. But today, you mentioned there, it's bigger and better than most other things that take place ceremonially. It's obviously President Trump's second state visit, so we want to make that a bigger and grander affair than his first state visit. So today, we've got 3 state colours from the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards being turned out and presented to him, and a slightly larger Guard of Honour than normal.
You've got a job to do. Do you get to look around at any point and enjoy that spectacle that's going on around you?
I will enjoy the trip home and probably watching the footage of hopefully it all going swimmingly afterwards. That's what I'll enjoy most, but I'll try and stay focused on what I've got to deliver today.
Storm, you mentioned meeting Donald Trump. You know that's going to happen, do you? Do you think you're going to be able to have a chat with him, or is it going to be a handshake and you do what you do?
I'll present the Guard to the President and then show him around to inspect it. He'll have the opportunity to ask me some questions and interact should he want to, so I'm prepared for that and looking forward to it.
Have you thought about what you might say?
I have certainly thought about some of the questions that he might ask.
Yeah.
He is interested and has been interested in military history, etc. So I've got a couple of answers up my sleeve should those questions come my way.
OK, well, I'm not going to try and second-guess anything that Donald Trump might ask. He's famously unpredictable, so I do wish you the best of luck with that, Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green. Appreciate your time this morning. I hope you have a very smooth day.
Thank you.
Let's have a word now with Sir Anthony Selden, historian and author, who is one of the best versed individuals on this pomp and pageantry. Sir Anthony, what's your take first and foremost, just to start things, on the scale of the grandeur? We've just heard Lieutenant Colonel Green talking about that.
Well, here I am in a very quiet Mall with Buckingham Palace behind me. Very little going on here. Look, this is absolutely massive. State visits are enormous for both countries, and this second state visit is a really historic moment that we'll look back in many years to come. And so enormously important, more important for Britain, obviously, than for the US. and it's hard to think of a higher stakes state visit by an American president in history.
But also, Sir Anthony, the more effort that is put into this, the more attention it gains. And that attention is both positive and certainly from the point of view of the government and the royals, negative attention. There are going to be protests. There are people who've already told us they don't want this to be happening on British soil.
So all state visits are controversial to some extent or other. When President Reagan visited, there were high emotions around him, and George W. Bush after the Iraq War. But there are very strong feelings here. But at the end of the day, Britain is a democracy. America is a democracy that was born out of Britain, rebelling against Britain and going its own way. But the two countries are inextricably united, as they have been throughout the last 100 years. And Britain believes in democracy, and America had a democratic election and fairly voted President Trump back in. And that is the order of the day. He is the genuinely elected leader of the United States and indeed of the free world. So this is going to be a very, very significant event. Most fascinating of all will be what will be going on, obviously, behind the closed doors, away from the cameras.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Look, Sir Anthony, the UK was the dominant superpower in the world in the 19th century. The US arguably defined as a superpower the 20th century. Can the UK still measure up, if you like, to the US? Is this how it's best done with things like this?
So I think this is very important. It's very important, obviously, for the government to show that the relationship matters in the most difficult of circumstances. There's never been a president as unpredictable as President Trump, never been a president, certainly not in modern times, who has brought so much power into the White House and who has made such a strong stance on the global stage. So this is very high stakes, but you know, this matters to President Trump. He's a very shrewd figure. He wouldn't be laying so much store by this visit if he knew that it didn't matter very much to him, his standing in America. The optics of this are incredibly important for President Trump, not just his own personal gratification, his love going back to his mother of the royal family, his admiration for the king, but the American people and the love that they have for the British royal family. There's no royal family like the British royal family anywhere left in the world today. And so this is, well, to use the word again, this is historic. And how the next 2 days play out will be absolutely riveting to watch.
Absolutely. I think with the President and the King, you've got arguably the two best-known individuals on the planet coming together here later on today. Sir Anthony Selden, always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Well, still to come here on Breakfast, we'll be discussing much more. The day of pomp and pageantry ahead of us. President Trump will be meeting the royal family here in Windsor when he arrives later on this morning. After the break, I was speaking to the Sun's Harry Cole, who, of course, did that interview with Peter Mandelson that rather precipitated his firing from the job of UK ambassador to the US. Harry will be joining us, amongst others, after the break. Welcome back to Windsor. There is no denying that the UK really is rolling out the red carpet with interest for President Trump's unprecedented second state visit here. Today will be full of the pomp and pageantry, with the US leader treated to a carriage procession, albeit inside the grounds of Windsor Castle, and also a flypast. Special editions which have never been deployed before on a state visit. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills is going to be with us in a bit to discuss this. But first, we're going to talk to Katie Balls, who's Washington editor for The Times, who's here with me in Windsor. And joining us down the line from central London is editor-at-large at The Sun, Harry Cole. And Harry, I'd like to come to you first because, look, in the run-up to this, of course, you interviewed Peter Mandelson. He rather anticipated that there was worse to come in terms of revealing the full nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and then that led to his sacking as well. To say that's a spanner in the works in terms of the planning of all of this is probably a bit of an understatement, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, the pivotal role that the UK ambassador played in making this state visit happening, to formulating the relationships between two politically very different leaders behind the scenes, cannot be understated. I don't think anyone really thinks that Peter Mandelson did a bad job as ambassador. It's it was his appointment that is causing Keir Starmer trouble. But yes, to lose your sort of most senior diplomat, essentially, probably one of the most senior diplomats in the world, on the eve of one of the most important visits for Britain, for Keir Starmer personally, and for his struggling government at a time of great upheaval, a visit that could go wrong very easily behind the scenes and go wrong very easily publicly. Yeah, it is a blow, but I suspect they'll be playing that down, and it'll be all grins and smiles. But no, the embarrassment cannot be downplayed.
Yeah, Katie, let me come to you on this issue of Peter Mandelson, because, of course, the spectre of Jeffrey Epstein looms over not just Peter Mandelson, not just another certain royal resident here in Windsor, but Donald Trump himself. And we've seen his image beamed onto the walls of this castle as well. That looms large, doesn't it, really, Jeffrey Epstein here?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's the elephant in the room. The question is it going to come up in a way that is audible on this trip? And you wouldn't expect that to be today. Today is in many ways seen as Lowe's on the diplomatic side as the easy bit. It's pomp, it's pageantry, it's pictures. Tomorrow is where there is going to be more press interaction, that press conference with Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. And I think the question is anyone going to ask about Jeffrey Epstein? And how will Donald Trump take to that? Are people going to ask about the departure of Peter Mandelson? Someone who started off with scepticism in DC. Lots of figures around Trump weren't sure about him, thought he was quite Labour, had criticised their boss, but actually had won a lot of people around. So there was some, I think, bewilderment, particularly because if Peter Mandelson goes, what does that say that Keir Starmer thinks about Donald Trump's relations to Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes, a lot of people respected Karen Pierce's work as previous ambassador, putting in the groundwork in some ways. Before I go back to Harry, Katie, what kind of reaction was there in the US to Mandelson being sacked? Was there a big reaction, or was it just underwhelming for them?
So I think it's hard to gauge the reaction in the sense that the day or so after that happened, you had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and that has just dominated everything in the US. It's really the one story. So it has not been the time to say, oh, what do you think about Peter Mandelson? But certainly I think those who've been closely involved with the state visit found it, a little bit bewildering to change a key person on that so soon after. And when I was speaking to some Republicans, and later in the week, they said, oh, that would be a day two story over here. We'll get over it after day two, suggesting it wouldn't bring down the careers of American politicians.
Harry, let me come back to you because, of course, we saw after the killing of Charlie Kirk just how polarised politics can be in the US. It's a very different situation there to what we see here, yet Keir Starmer and President Trump, they seem to get on in spite of those philosophical differences.
Yeah, they do. And one of the most important things a British Prime Minister can do is to cement the special relationship, to get close and stay close to our most important ally, which is America. And Keir Starmer has done that. We saw the slightly unedifying, slightly cringeworthy, great flourish with which he presented the invitation from King Charles for this unprecedented second state visit, in the face of criticism from some sort of senior figures, senior diplomats who think that maybe they should hold off before inviting Donald Trump back on another state visit. But no, Keir Starmer has made great gains to try and formulate that relationship. And publicly, Donald Trump has been playing nicey-nicey. Now, I understand privately, he's questioned Keir Starmer's ratings, to put it politely. Donald Trump's a man that likes winners. And Keir Starmer's government is in trouble. I think he will be, I suspect, too polite this side of the dinner tonight to make any sort of political intervention. In previous years, back in 2018, 2019, Donald Trump arriving in the United Kingdom normally meant a rocket-fired diatribe, a big intervention into domestic politics by the US president. That doesn't feel like it's on the cards yet. However, tomorrow is another day for Keir Starmer, and you wonder, once Donald Trump's got that picture with King Charles, that big honorary dinner, whether he'll start to relax a little bit more and maybe tell us what he really thinks.
But Harry, there's plenty of people, and some of whom are protesting, saying the special relationship has lapsed into a sycophantic relationship. What do you think?
Yeah, look, there are protesters, of course there are, but I don't think it's anywhere near on the scale of what we saw in Donald Trump's first term. You had Sadiq Khan pop up in The Guardian this morning to, do an entirely predictable rant. There's no loss there between the two of them. But the same people that were protesting, leading the protest on a political level, Yvette Cooper, for example, who was marching against Donald Trump's previous visits, was there on the runway shaking his hand for 11 seconds yesterday. Now the foreign secretary. Yeah. Some of the most vocal people who opposed Donald Trump last time round are now in power. There's a certain irony there, isn't there?
Katie, let me come back to you, because David Lammy, when he was Foreign Secretary, before that changed for him a couple of weeks ago, he put in the groundwork with J.D. Vance. They went fishing. I think they retrospectively got a licence to do that in the Cotswolds, but nevertheless, the groundwork has been put in there. We're seeing, obviously, Keir Starmer doing what he does, and as Harry mentioned, they're bringing out with a flourish the invitation to this second state visit. How do the Americans view the Brits in that respect? Do they understand why it's being done? Do they like it? Or do they think that, we're just another country like any other?
I don't think they think we're just a country like any other. I think that actually, particularly this White House administration, is more Anglophile than what we've probably seen in decades.
Yeah. More than Biden.
Completely. If you think about Biden, Obama, holidays to Ireland, if you think about these guys, we just had what one Republican described to me as a MAGA British summer. Perhaps not everyone's cup of tea, but, Trump here for Turnberry, J.D. Vance in the Cotswolds, as you mentioned, and then, of course, Trump back here. And they take a really active interest in the UK. And it comes from a place where they say, well, we have very shared values. They think if the culture's not right here, it could come to America next. So it starts to become a little bit of a double-edged sword in many ways, because they care, as they will say. It means they have a lot of opinions on the UK.
Final question to you both. Katie first. What does success look like for this at the end of tomorrow?
I think success for Keir Starmer is going to look like there's not been any incredibly embarrassing moments or clashes where Donald Trump's either spoken over him or left him to
so
look
don't mess
awkward.
it up is the bar for you.
And then ideally some tangible wins to show that actually all the pomp and pageantry you're going to see, it's worth it because you get X in response.
Harry, same question to you. What does success look like after the state visit has come to a close?
No, well, Katie's completely right, as ever. I mean, for Keir Starmer, success this week would not be losing a deputy prime minister or an ambassador or a major resignation, because he seems to lose one a week at the moment. But just get through it, smile, bear it, sign some checks, shake some hands, and breathe a big sigh of relief when Air Force One is wheels up on Thursday night. Getting through that press conference, will take some doing. I suspect we'll have a few barbs, but Starmer's a pro. He's handled Trump. He's survived an Oval Office. I suspect he can survive a press conference. But famous last words.
I think that summary rather applies to a lot of us here in Windsor today, as it happens, Harry. Really appreciate you joining us. Katie, thank you to you very much as well. We have much more still to come here from Windsor on breakfast as we anticipate the arrival here later on this morning of the President and the First Lady. Stay with us.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Slide your minutes, slide better. Flying minutes, fly better. Thank you.
We do have a bit of breaking news to bring you, and it's all to do with a group of critically ill and injured children from Gaza. They've been evacuated, we're being told, to the UK for urgent NHS medical help. That's the very latest from the government, saying that a group of critically ill and injured children have been evacuated from Gaza. They're heading to the UK for NHS treatments. Any more on that, we'll bring it to you as and when we get it. We're going to talk about how some of the greatest names in Hollywood have been paying tribute to Robert Redford after he died at the age of 89. The actor wasn't only an icon in front of the camera, but behind it too, and was a great champion of independent film. Debbie Rigard is here, our entertainment reporter, reflecting on the life, the legacy of Robert Redford. And as I said, some of the greatest names have been paying tribute to this very great man who, on reflection, was one of the coolest dudes in Hollywood.
Honestly, perfect description of him. There's been such an outpouring of love. Even Julianne Moore put up an Instagram post saying that Redford was the first movie star that she ever loved, and actually shared a photo of her at Sundance as a fan, just there to see Robert himself. I was at the premiere yesterday for One Battle After Another, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's brand new film, and we actually got speaking about Robert Redford, and here's what he had to say.
It's a great loss, first off. Not only was he an incredible actor, and, you know, we did a political thriller tonight. He did 3 Days of the Condor, All the President's Men. He was an exceptional director as well as actor. Quiz show, films that will stand the test of time.
You know, it's hard to believe how many people that he brought into the industry, influence like Leo DiCaprio there. But it was also because he was behind the scenes. He was directing. Because he was that actor, he was able to understand how a story should be told.
Exactly. So many times when I speak to actors, people say that there's such a very big difference between directors who have never been in front of the screen versus people who have been. And he was one of those. Of course, after spending times in the 60s and 70s as an actor in the 1980s, he then moved on to become a director. And his first directorial debut was actually Ordinary People, which ended up getting 4 Oscars, Best Picture and Best Director as well for Robert. And it was all about a family relationship. And it was actually one of the films of that time that actually focused a lot on mental health, which wasn't really seen that much as well within Hollywood films as well. Of course, then we have The Horse Whisperer, which we saw Scarlett Johansson, who was only 11 at the time, starring in that one. And then we move on to the likes of him in the 2000s, seeing him with Brad Pitt with Spy Game.
Love that film.
Into the next generation, you can see every single generation knew who this man was for different types of films as well. We talk about how in Captain America, he decided to be part of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, simply because he knew that some of the younger generation might know him, and he wanted to try.
Yeah, he didn't actually like franchises, but did it for the kids. Yeah. Debbie, thank you so much. We're going to hand back now to wrap the show with Matt Barbette in Windsor.
Leah, thank you very much indeed. All sorts of preparations happening here, of course. A little bit of hubbub behind us. Tons of police, of course, on the streets of Windsor. I can't say there's an awful lot of sort of well-wishers out. There aren't any protesters really either. I think a lot of the focus of that is going to be happening in London. And of course, we're not actually going to see Donald Trump in person either. We may well see his helicopter land in the grounds of Windsor Castle behind me here as well. Pleased to say I'm joined here by Sarah Jane Mee, who's going to be taking over very shortly here on Sky News, and also Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent, just getting themselves ready for my probing questions. They're not going to be too difficult, I promise you. Rhiannon, to you first. Look, we've been setting the scene all morning. It's certainly, there's a lot of comings and goings, a lot of final touches being put as well. It's hard to overstate how big a deal this is, certainly for the people who work there behind us.
Yeah, and nobody is being shy or coy about just how big a deal this is. This is going to be the largest military ceremonial event that we've seen in living memory for a state visit. They are doing everything possible to make sure that this second state visit for Donald Trump goes above and beyond what he could possibly expect. Of course, he had that first state visit in 2019. People have probably been scratching their heads like, what can we do to make this one extra special? There's various things we're going to see. We're going to see this fly past take place. We're going to see the largest Guard of Honour that we've ever seen, and also a US military band involved. And I think that's the importance of these state visits. It's underpinning kind of the important ties that we have on so many different levels. And while, yeah, it's all about the pictures, it's all about the optics, but it's about those important country-to-country relationships, but also family to family. We're going to see a lot of that today. We've got our own family here as well, of course. Joined by SJ too.
Just sneaking into shots.
Well, clearly I missed the memo on colourful coats today. That's my bad. That's my bad. SJ, you'll be taking over from me in just a few moments' time, and I think actually you're going to see an awful lot up in the skies, if not on the ground. There's going to be that fly past as well by the red arrows. I mean, that's always worth having a look at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be, well, this is the pomp and pageantry day today, isn't it? Tomorrow is all about the politics. Today is all about the best of the UK, displaying that for Donald Trump and trying to soften him up, if you like. Can we say that? We can say that. I was quite surprised how quiet it was actually on the drive in to Windsor today. I drove in from East Sussex and sort of driving through the streets, very quiet, just the normal commuter traffic. Police lining the streets though. If you know Windsor well, the straight road coming into Windsor where Frogmore Cottage is, of course, where Prince Harry used to live. Police lining the fields, looking up at the sky, essentially. They're on drone watch. But in terms of people coming out here to see Donald Trump, whether it's to welcome him or protest against him, I haven't actually seen big numbers yet, but it is still early. It doesn't really get underway until 11, does it?
It is. What we do have is plenty of flags. I think that's pretty common around the UK at the moment, but the flags here are next level. Plenty of gold tassels on these fancy ones. We'll have much more from Windsor with SJ and Rhiannon coming your way after the top of the hour.